The elevator doors slid shut and Sophia's breath stopped. Adrian Moretti was standing 3 feet away, blocking every exit that didn't exist. His voice was quiet. That was the worst part, how quiet it was when he said it. "Tonight, it's only you and me." She had spent 3 months hiding what she knew. 3 months pretending the numbers didn't tell a story. 3 months convincing herself that staying silent was survival. He had been watching her the entire time, and now the doors were locked. If this story already has your heart pounding, you're exactly where we want you. Subscribe to our channel. Follow this story all the way to the end, and drop a comment telling us what city you're watching from. We want to see how far this story has traveled. Sophia Bennett did not frighten easily. That was not arrogance. That was experience. She had spent 6 years inside the financial underbelly of some of the most powerful companies in Manhattan, and she had learned early that the people who showed fear were the people who got eaten alive. You kept your face calm. You kept your voice steady. You gave them nothing to work with. But standing inside that elevator, the hum of the motor gone silent, the numbers frozen on the panel above the doors, Adrian Moretti, less than an arm's length away. Sophia felt something she had trained herself to suppress crawl up the back of her throat. Not panic. Not yet. But something close to it. She pressed her back against the wall of the elevator without realizing she'd moved. Her portfolio was tucked under her left arm, her phone in her right-hand screen locked. She did the calculation automatically. The building was almost empty at this hour. The security desk on the lobby level was staffed by one guard who spent most of his shift watching basketball highlights on his phone. The parking garage intercom was 3 floors below her. No one was coming. Adrian hadn't moved. He stood in the center of the elevator with the particular stillness of a man who had never needed to rush anything in his life. His suit was charcoal gray, no tie collar open at the throat. He was taller than she expected from the photographs in the financial press photographs that always made him look composed, controlled, curated. In person, he was all of those things, but there was something underneath them. Something that the cameras hadn't caught. He was watching her the way people watch a problem they haven't decided how to solve yet. The emergency brake on this model trips automatically when there's a weight variance in the cable system, he said as casually as if he were discussing the weather. It'll reset in about 12 minutes, sometimes less. Sophia said nothing, unless someone already called for a manual reset, he continued, in which case a technician would need to be dispatched, 45 minutes minimum, more this time of night. She kept her eyes on him. Did someone call for a manual reset? The corner of his mouth moved. I don't know. Did they? Her pulse was doing something she didn't appreciate. She forced it steady through the kind of conscious will that took years to develop. What do you want, Mr. Moretti? He tilted his head slightly as if the directness surprised him. I want to know why you didn't tell anyone. The question landed differently than she expected. Not a threat. Not a negotiation opening. A genuine question asked by someone who had been thinking about it for a while and had finally decided to ask. She didn't answer. 3 months ago, Adrian said, his voice still carrying that same unhurried quality. You were assigned to review the Vantage Capital subsidiary accounts. Routine audit, nothing complicated. He paused. Except you found something that wasn't routine. You found it on a Tuesday afternoon. You stayed in the office until 11:30 that night, and when you came back the next morning, you filed a report that said everything was in order. The air in the elevator felt thinner than it had 60 seconds ago. Then you requested a transfer to a different portfolio, he said. You started taking a different route to work. You changed which coffee shop you used in the mornings. He paused again. You were scared, but you stayed quiet. And I want to understand why. Sophia's jaw tightened. You've been following me. I've been watching, he said. There's a difference. Not to me. He accepted that without flinching. Fair. She searched his face for the angle. There was always an angle. In her experience, powerful men did not corner women in elevators out of idle curiosity. They did it because they wanted something, a signature, a silence, a cooperation wrapped in the language of choice. She knew every version of this conversation, and she had walked out of all of them with her integrity intact. But this one felt different. She couldn't identify why, and that bothered her more than the elevator did. "What's in it for you?" she asked. "Information," he said. "You have more information than anyone I've ever worked for." "Not this kind." She studied him. "What kind is it?" Adrian was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "The kind that tells me whether you're someone worth trusting." The silence stretched. Sophia looked at the elevator doors. They weren't going to open for her. She understood that not because he'd locked them, but because the situation itself had locked them. They were 12 floors above the garage. The building was emptying out for the night. And whatever Adrian Moretti had come here to say to her, he was going to finish saying it. She had two options. She could treat this as a threat and respond accordingly, defensive closed, giving him nothing. Or she could treat it as something else and see where it went. She had built her entire career on reading situations correctly. She made her choice. "I found a discrepancy," she said. "Not a typo, not an accounting error, a pattern. Vantage Capital's subsidiary accounts were structured to look completely clean on the surface, and I mean completely. Whoever built the system knew exactly how our audit protocols worked. They knew what we checked in what order, and what we tended to overlook." She paused. "The only way you'd know our audit protocols that specifically is if you were inside the company, or if someone inside the company told you." Adrian's expression didn't change. "Keep going." "The discrepancy wasn't in the numbers," she said. "It was in the timestamps. Transactions were being recorded at times that didn't match the settlement confirmations on the counterparty side. 37 transactions over 18 months. Each one small enough to pass individual review. Together they totaled just under $40 million. $40 million moved in pieces small enough to be invisible. She had stared at those numbers for 4 hours on that Tuesday afternoon. She had rebuilt the timeline 3 times to make sure she wasn't seeing something that wasn't there. When she was absolutely certain she was seeing it correctly, she had saved a copy of her analysis to a personal drive, closed the company files, and gone home to sit at her kitchen table for 2 hours thinking about what to do next. "You didn't report it because you knew your own company was involved," Adrian said. "I didn't report it," she said, "because I didn't know how deep it went. If I filed internally, the report would pass through at least 3 supervisors before it went anywhere actionable. If any one of those 3 was connected to whatever I'd found, the evidence would disappear, and I'd be out of a job inside a week." She looked at him steadily. "You learn fast in this industry. The people who file reports about the wrong things don't get protected. They get relocated, or restructured, or they develop sudden performance issues that weren't there 6 months before. So you stayed quiet." "I stayed quiet and I kept watching," she said. "Because I'd rather know more before I move than move too soon and lose everything." Adrian was still for a moment. Then something shifted in his expression, not dramatically, not in any way she could easily name, but something moved behind his eyes that hadn't been there before. "You didn't stay quiet because you were protecting yourself," he said. "I was protecting myself." "You were protecting the investigation," he said. "There's a difference. If you were only protecting yourself, you would have buried the copy you saved and never looked at it again." She hadn't told him about the copy. The realization hit her cold. "How do you know about the drive?" she said. "I don't," he said. "I know about you. People who are only afraid don't come back the next morning and request a transfer to a different portfolio so they can keep watching from a safer angle. That's not fear. That's strategy." Her pulse was doing the thing again. She didn't try to stop it this time. "Who are you?" she asked. "You know who I am. I know what the financial press says about you. I know what the SEC filings list as your company interests. I know that you've been connected by rumor, if not by evidence, to 3 hostile acquisitions in the last 2 years, where the target company's internal problems became public knowledge at precisely the right moment for you to make an offer." She held his gaze. "I know that nobody's ever been able to prove anything." "Does that concern you?" It means you're either very careful, she said, or very well connected. Both, he said. Then why are you talking to me? He was quiet for 3 full seconds, long enough that she noticed. Because what you found inside Vantage Capital, he said, is the edge of something much larger. And the people responsible for it know you found it. They've been waiting to see what you'd do. He let that land. They didn't move against you because they assumed you would do what most people do. Stay quiet. Stay safe. Let it go. Her skin went cold. Are you telling me I'm in danger? I'm telling you, he said, that staying quiet only protected you as long as they believed you were going to keep staying quiet. The moment they decide you're not, or the moment someone else makes that decision for you, you lose the only protection you had. The elevator was very still around them. So what are you suggesting? She said. I'm suggesting. Adrian said that you stop working alone. She stared at him. You want to work with me? I want to know if you're willing to. It was the strangest offer she'd ever received. It was also, she realized, the most honest one. He hadn't presented it as a favor or a rescue or an opportunity she'd be foolish to refuse. He'd presented it as a question. The elevator hummed back to life. The panel above the doors flickered and the numbers began moving again. Neither of them looked at it. Why me? She asked. Because you found something in 18 months of records that a team of 7 analysts had reviewed and missed, he said. And because when you found it, you didn't run, you repositioned. He paused. I've worked with a lot of smart people. Smart people who found problems and ran aren't useful. Smart people who found problems and repositioned are rare. The doors opened on the lobby level. Sophia stood there for a moment. The security guard was at his desk, not looking up. The lobby was mostly empty. The city stretched out through the glass beyond the entrance, dark and indifferent. She could walk out. She could go home, delete the file on her personal drive, and never think about this conversation again. She could build a comfortable, survivable career inside the careful limits she'd already learned. Or, she turned back to look at Adrian. I want to see what you have, she said. Whatever you know about Vantage Capital that I don't know yet. I'm not agreeing to anything until I've seen it. He reached into the inside pocket of his jacket and produced a single key card. Plain black, no markings. He held it out to her. 43rd floor, he said. Tomorrow, 7 a.m. She looked at the key card for a long moment before she took it. If this is a trap, she said, you should know that I've already made arrangements for my files to be sent to 3 separate parties if I don't check in every 24 hours. He almost smiled. I know. Then you also know that backing out isn't an option for either of us now. I know that too, he said. She put the key card in her coat pocket and walked out of the building without looking back. She didn't exhale until she was half a block away. The 43rd floor was not what she expected. She had prepared herself for the visible language of power, the kind of office that was designed to make visitors feel small, all glass and altitude, and the particular silence of money. She'd spent enough time in those rooms to know how to hold herself in them. Spine straight, voice level, give nothing away before you know who's asking for it. But the 43rd floor of the building on Lexington was not that. It looked like a working space. A real one, not staged to look functional, but actually functional in the way that people who cared more about what they were doing than how it looked created a functional space. 3 walls of document boards, the kind with pinned photographs and printed pages and handwritten notes connected by lines in different colors. A long table covered in stacked folders. 3 computer monitors, all active, running what she recognized as financial analysis software. 2 people were already there when she arrived. A man in his late 40s, compact, quick-eyed, who introduced himself as Marcus, and a woman around 30 who gave her name as Delia and went straight back to the screen she'd been studying when Sophia walked in. Adrian was standing at the far document board, still in his coat. He looked up when she came in. You came, he said. I said I would. People say a lot of things at 7 a.m. in a lobby elevator. She set her bag on the nearest chair and looked at the document boards. Walk me through it. And he did. What Adrian Moretti laid out for her over the next 3 hours was not a theory. It was an architecture. 40 months of it, patient, methodical, built piece by piece from sources she would spend the next hour asking him to verify. He answered every question without irritation. He showed her his sourcing. He admitted what he didn't know with the same flatness that he presented what he did. The picture that emerged was staggering. Victor Hale. She knew the name. Everyone in her industry knew the name Victor Hale, CEO of Hale Consolidated. The kind of self-made success story that got turned into magazine cover profiles about disruption and vision and the courage to take calculated risks. He was photographed at charity events. He testified before Senate committees on financial regulation. He had won 3 industry awards in the past decade. He was also, according to every piece of evidence spread across the walls of that room, systematically destroying companies. Not through competition, not through innovation, through a mechanism that was almost elegant in how wrong it was. He identified companies with internal vulnerabilities, placed agents inside those companies to either create or exacerbate the vulnerabilities, and then used the resulting instability to acquire the companies at drastically deflated valuations. After acquisition, the companies were stripped of their viable assets and dissolved. Families who had built businesses over generations, employees who had mortgaged their futures on stability that was never as stable as they believed. People who had done nothing wrong except exist inside a system that someone had quietly decided to steal from them. And Vantage Capital was not the only company. It was the most recent. But there were 7 others before it, stretching back 4 years, each one following the same pattern. Each one attributed to market forces, management failures, bad luck. Sophia stood at the document board for a long time after Adrian finished speaking. "The agent inside Vantage Capital," she said. "The one manipulating the accounts." "We have 3 candidates," Marcus said from across the room. "We've narrowed it to 3. We haven't confirmed which one." "I can confirm it," Sophia said. Both men looked at her. "The timestamp pattern," she said. "The transactions were entered from inside the building, but the access logs show the entry terminals were logged under 3 different employee IDs. The IDs rotated on a schedule. I thought it was a security protocol, cycling through credentials to avoid triggering use pattern alerts." She paused. "But 2 of those IDs belong to people who weren't in the building on those dates. I know because I was reviewing staffing records as part of the standard audit prep. Only one of the 3 IDs belongs to someone with a consistent in-office presence that matches every single transaction date." She named him. The room went quiet. Delia turned slowly from her screen. Marcus looked at Adrian. Adrian was looking at Sophia. "You've known this for 3 months," he said. It wasn't an accusation. It was almost wonder. The particular quality of a person encountering something they hadn't anticipated. "I knew there was one person," she said. "I didn't know what they were connected to." She looked at the document board. "Now I do." She went back to her regular office that afternoon and did everything exactly as she always did. She reviewed the files she was supposed to review. She attended a 2 o'clock meeting about Q2 projections. She responded to emails with the same measured professional language she always used. She smiled at the right moments and excused herself from a going-away gathering for a colleague she'd always found pleasant but had never been close to. And the entire time she was thinking. She had spent 3 months trying to stay invisible inside a situation that was already watching her. She had thought her stillness was her protection. She had believed that if she moved carefully enough, waited long enough, she could find a way through this that didn't cost her everything. What Adrian had shown her that morning had changed the calculation entirely. The people running this scheme weren't passively hoping she stayed quiet. They were actively monitoring her. The flag on her audit transfer, she'd thought it was routine administrative paperwork, but the routing indicated it had been reviewed by someone 3 levels above her immediate supervisor. Someone who had no business reviewing routine transfer requests. Someone who had apparently looked at her file and made a determination about her risk level and then done nothing, which meant they'd decided she wasn't a threat. She needed them to keep thinking that. But she also knew, with the cold clarity, that came from 3 years of learning to read financial patterns the way other people read faces, that the window on that assumption was closing. Sooner or later, someone would reassess. Sooner or later, the careful, invisible evidence she'd been sitting on would become visible to the wrong people through the wrong channel. She needed to move before that happened. She was deep enough inside her own thoughts that she almost missed the moment when the calculation changed. Almost. She was crossing the lobby on her way out for the night, the same lobby where she'd walked past the security desk 18 hours earlier. Coat pocket weighted with a key card she hadn't asked for when she saw him. He was standing near the revolving door that led to the street reading something on his phone. Early 40s. Dark coat. Nothing about him was obviously wrong, but she'd developed a specific sensor for men who were positioned too casually, who occupied a space in a way that was designed to look accidental, but wasn't. He was watching the elevator banks. He was watching to see when she came down. Sophia's stride didn't break. She went to the lobby bathroom, locked herself in a stall, and typed a single message to Marcus, whose number she'd put in her phone that morning with the same quiet precision she brought to everything. Someone's watching the lobby. Dark coat near the revolving door. How concerned should I be? The response came back in 45 seconds. Very. Don't go to your car. We're sending someone to the side entrance. Her throat tightened. She typed back. How long? 8 minutes. She stood in the locked stall for 8 minutes and 40 seconds, listening to her own heartbeat. The woman she'd been 3 months ago would have been terrified. The woman she was now was something slightly different. She was angry. When the message came that the side entrance was clear, she walked out of the bathroom without looking in the direction of the revolving door, turned left, took the service corridor, pushed through the side exit, and found the black car idling exactly where Marcus had said it would be. The driver didn't say anything. She didn't either. But when the car merged into traffic and the building disappeared behind them, she pulled out her phone and opened the analysis file she'd been building for 3 months in a password-protected folder on her personal drive. And she started adding to it. Because the game had changed tonight, and Sophia Bennett had no intention of losing it. She didn't hear from Adrian until almost midnight. She was at her kitchen table, the same table where she'd sat 2 hours after finding the discrepancy, the same table that had absorbed every sleepless night of the 3 months since when her phone vibrated. Not a call. A message. They ran a background check on you tonight. Standard corporate security protocol. Except your company's internal security division didn't run it. Hale Consolidated's people did. She stared at the screen. That means they already know you transferred portfolios. They know you were on the Vantage Capital audit. They're trying to determine if you're a liability. She typed. How long before they decide I am? The 3 dots pulsed on the screen. Then depends on what they find when they go looking. What will they find? Another pause. Exactly what you want them to find. Marcus handled it this afternoon. Your digital trail looks like someone who found something, got scared, and decided it wasn't worth the trouble. She let out a slow breath. But that only holds as long as you keep behaving like someone who isn't a threat. She typed. I can do that. I know. A pause. Then, get some sleep, Sophia. She looked at her phone for a moment. Then she typed. You've been doing this for a long time. Too long. Why? The 3 dots appeared and disappeared twice before his response came through. Because somebody has to. She set her phone down on the table. Outside, the city moved through the dark with its usual absolute indifference. 12 million people living their lives at whatever speed they'd chosen, trusting the systems around them to be what they appeared to be. Trusting that the companies managing their money, employing their neighbors, underwriting their futures, were operating within the lines. Most of them were, but some of them weren't. And the people who knew the difference had a choice: look away or stay in it. Sophia Bennett had never been very good at looking away. She picked up her phone and went back to her analysis file, and she worked until 3 in the morning building the case that was going to take Victor Hale apart piece by piece, brick by brick, with the careful and absolute precision of someone who had always understood that the most dangerous thing in any room wasn't the loudest person in it. It was the quiet one, who had been watching long enough to know exactly where to push. The morning after Marcus rerouted her digital trail, Sophia walked into her office like someone who had decided to stop running. Not because she felt safe. She didn't. She felt the opposite of safe. She felt the particular exposed alertness of a person who has finally accepted that the danger they've been pretending isn't there, has been there all along, and the only sensible response is to stop pretending and start moving. She made coffee. She sat at her desk. She opened the portfolio she'd been assigned after transferring off the Vantage Capital audit, a mid-size logistics company. Nothing unusual. Exactly the kind of routine work that a person retreating from something uncomfortable would request. She reviewed the first 40 pages with the same focused attention she brought to everything. And while she did, she watched. Her office had a glass panel that looked out onto the main floor. She'd always thought of it as a feature. She didn't particularly want the fishbowl quality of it, the way everyone could see whether she was on her phone or staring at the ceiling. But now she understood it differently. It gave her a wide-angle view of the floor without requiring her to turn her head. She could see the elevator banks, the copy stations, the cluster of desks near the south windows where the junior analysts sat. She could see very clearly the man who had positioned himself at the desk directly across from her office door, a desk that had been empty for 6 weeks since its previous occupant transferred to the Boston office, now occupied by someone she didn't recognize. New hire. That was what the email said when it circulated yesterday afternoon, just before she'd left for the night. Please welcome Thomas Reedy to the Portfolio Analytics team. She'd read it and registered it the way she registered most mass internal emails, distantly, without particular interest. Now she looked at Thomas Reedy sitting at the desk across from her office door, and she noticed that he was positioned to see exactly when she arrived, when she left, who came to her door, and whether she carried anything with her when she moved through the floor. She turned a page in the logistics review. She did not let her expression change. She typed a message to Marcus under the table phone in her lap. New hire on my floor. Thomas Reedy. He's watching my office. Marcus came back inside of a minute. We see him. Hale Consolidated subsidiary placed 3 people inside your company 14 months ago. He's one of them. 3 people. She kept her face perfectly still. They're not just watching you, Marcus continued. They're watching the whole floor, looking for anyone who might know what you know. She typed, does anyone else know? No. You're the only one who found the pattern. Then why are they watching the whole floor? A longer pause this time. Because they're not sure you haven't told anyone. They're mapping your relationships. Who you eat lunch with. Who comes to your office. Who you talk to in the elevator. Sophia looked up from her phone. Through the glass panel, Thomas Reedy was typing something, eyes on his screen, performing the focused industry of a man doing his job. She thought about the going-away gathering last night. The colleague she'd stopped in to say goodbye to, a woman named Janet, mid-50s, 20 years with the company, quiet and reliable in the way that people who love their work tend to be. Sophia had spent 10 minutes at the gathering, long enough to be present without being notable. Had Thomas Reedy been watching then? Had someone noted who she spoke to? The logistics review was open in front of her. She turned another page. She typed, I need to know who the other 2 are. Working on it. Give us until end of day. She put her phone in her desk drawer. She would not check it again until she was somewhere she could do so without being observed. She knew the rules of this now, not because Adrian had given her a manual, but because the logic of it was the same logic she applied to financial analysis. Every move created a record. Every record could be read. The goal was to make sure that the record being read was the record she was writing, not the one she was actually keeping. At 11 o'clock, her supervisor knocked on her glass door and came in. Richard Cho was 52, silver-haired, the kind of man who had been in finance long enough to know that competence and ambition were 2 entirely separate qualities that only occasionally showed up in the same person. He had always treated Sophia with the mild, consistent respect of someone who recognized the former and had accepted that she was unlikely to deploy the latter in ways that threatened him. She liked him. She trusted him as much as she trusted anyone in this building, which was to say carefully within understood limits. How's the Patterson Logistics Review coming? He asked. On track, she said. Nothing unusual so far. I should have a preliminary by Thursday. He nodded, scanning her desk in the absent way that managers scanned desks when they were checking something without wanting to appear to be checking something. You seem settled, he said. I'm always settled. I know. He looked at her. I just meant after the Vantage Capital transfer. Some people take a while to find their rhythm again after a portfolio reassignment. She met his eyes. I'm fine, Richard. He nodded again slowly. Good. He started toward the door, then paused. That new analyst who started yesterday, Thomas. If he has questions about floor protocols, I mentioned you as a good person to ask. Hope that's all right. It took everything she had to keep her voice even. Of course. Richard left. She turned back to her screen. They were positioning their own person to have a legitimate reason to approach her. She exhaled through her nose very slowly and kept reading. Lunch was the test. She went to the same place she always went on Tuesdays. A sandwich counter 2 blocks from the building, busy enough at noon that it was loud and crowded, and she generally had to wait 6 or 7 minutes for her order. She had established this routine over 2 years. It was one of the things Marcus had built into her visible pattern: consistent, predictable, boring. She ordered her usual and found a spot near the window to wait. Thomas Reedy came in 4 minutes after she did. He ordered without looking at her. He got his food faster than she did. He'd clearly called ahead. He sat 2 tables away from her, facing the door, and spent the entire time on his phone. She ate her sandwich and thought about the document board on the 43rd floor. About the 7 companies before Vantage Capital stripped to their bones and dissolved. About the people who had built those companies and watched them collapse and never understood why. She thought about Adrian's voice in the elevator. You see what others ignore. That makes you valuable, but it also makes you dangerous to the wrong people. She hadn't fully understood it then. She understood it now. She finished her lunch, threw away her wrapper, and walked back to the office at the same pace she always walked. Thomas Reedy followed at a distance she was supposed to not notice. At 2 o'clock she got a calendar invitation for a meeting she hadn't scheduled. The subject line said Q3 Portfolio Alignment Cross-Departmental. The attendees were herself, Richard, 2 other analysts from different teams, and a name she didn't recognize. L. Carter, listed as attending from the Strategic Partnerships Division. She'd worked in this building for 4 years. She had never heard of a Strategic Partnerships Division. She accepted the invitation. She called Marcus from the stairwell during the 3 o'clock break. Her voice low. Her back to the security camera in the corner. Not to avoid it, because avoiding it would be visible, but to position herself in a way that made lip-reading difficult. L. Carter, she said. Strategic Partnerships. Attending a meeting I didn't request, with a division that doesn't appear on any internal directory I can find. Give me a second, Marcus said. She heard keyboard sounds, fast ones. Leslie Carter, Marcus said. 41 years old, spent 11 years at a private equity firm called Harwick Group before it was acquired. Harwick Group was acquired by Hale Consolidated, Sophia said. 18 months ago. She's been in your building for 6 weeks. 6 weeks. Right around the time Sophia had transferred portfolios. She's not there to attend a meeting, Sophia said. No, Marcus said. She's there to look at you. Assess whether you're a problem. And if she decides I am... Marcus didn't answer immediately. Then things move faster than we'd like. The weight of that settled on her like something physical. How much time do we have before your evidence is solid enough to move on? Adrian thinks 2 weeks, maybe 3. That's too long. I know. If they assess me as a liability. I know, Sophia. She pressed her back against the wall. What do I do in that meeting? You be exactly what they expect you to be, he said. Competent, unremarkable. Someone who found the edge of something, once got nervous and stepped back. Give her nothing to look at. And if she asks about Vantage Capital, she won't. Not directly. She'll circle it. She'll ask about workload and portfolio transitions and how you're adjusting. She'll be warm and interested and completely pleasant. He paused. Don't let the pleasantness fool you. It won't, Sophia said. She went back upstairs. Leslie Carter was in fact completely pleasant. She was the kind of woman who wore her intelligence the way some people wore expensive watches, visibly enough that you noticed it, understated enough that you weren't supposed to comment on it. She asked thoughtful questions about Sophia's background, her approach to complex audits, her experience transitioning between portfolio types. She had a way of listening that made you feel genuinely heard, and Sophia recognized it immediately as a professional technique, the kind you developed when your job was to make people comfortable enough to say things they wouldn't otherwise say. The other analysts in the room answered her questions with the easy openness of people who had nothing to hide and no particular reason to be careful. Sophia answered with the same easy openness, calibrated so precisely that she spent the entire 45-minute meeting listening to herself perform normalcy, while simultaneously tracking every question Leslie Carter asked for the thing underneath it. It was, in its own way, the most demanding professional exercise she had ever attempted. Near the end of the meeting, Leslie turned to her with a smile that reached her eyes with practiced warmth and said, "I understand you transitioned off the Vantage Capital Review a few months back. That portfolio has quite a reputation for complexity. How did you find it?" The room was quiet in the specific way that rooms went quiet when they weren't supposed to be paying attention to something. Sophia met her smile with an equal and identical one. "Honestly, a little overstated. The complexity is real, but it's the kind of complexity that resolves pretty cleanly once you understand the subsidiary structure. The transition was more about workload balance than anything else." "Of course," Leslie said. "Richard mentioned you'd wanted to expand your range of portfolio types." "That's right. Very practical." Leslie made a small note. "Smart to manage your own development that way." "I try," Sophia said. The meeting ended. In the elevator back to her floor, standing 2 feet from Thomas Reedy, Sophia stared at the panel above the doors and thought about what she had just done. She had just told Victor Hale's people that she was not a threat. She had done it convincingly. She knew she had, and it had cost her something. Not professionally, the performance had been clean, but something internal, something that lived in the part of her that had gotten into this field because she believed that the truth was worth finding and worth telling, had registered the lie and filed it somewhere it was going to press on her until this was over. She could live with that. She had to. Adrian was waiting outside her building when she came out that evening, not on the sidewalk. In a car parked across the street, a car she wouldn't have recognized if Marcus hadn't texted her the plate number 20 minutes earlier. She crossed the street without looking at it, passed it, and got in through the rear door on the far side. Adrian was in the back seat. He looked like he hadn't slept in a while. "How was Carter?" he asked. "Professional, thorough." Sophia set her bag on the seat between them. "I gave her nothing." "I know. Marcus was monitoring." She turned to look at him. "You were monitoring my meeting." "We were listening to confirm the assessment," he said. "Not to verify you. There's a difference. You keep making that distinction. Because it keeps being relevant." She held his gaze for a moment. His face was unreadable in the way that she was beginning to understand. Was not coldness, but control, the face of someone who had learned a long time ago that what showed on the outside could be used against you and had trained themselves accordingly. She recognized the training because she lived by the same principle. "Carter is going to report back to Hale's team tonight," she said. "Yes." "What will she say?" "Best case that you're clean, that the portfolio transfer was exactly what it looked like and you're not a problem." He paused. "Most likely case that you're probably clean but warrant continued observation." "And worst case," he was quiet for a beat, "that you know something." If that's her assessment, what happens? Adrian looked out the window for a moment. When he looked back, his voice was level, but there was something underneath it that hadn't been there in the elevator 2 nights ago. "Then we move the timeline up. We don't wait for the full evidence picture. We take what we have to the right people and we move now." "Is what you have enough?" "It's enough to start a serious investigation," he said. "It's not enough to guarantee the outcome we want." She understood the distinction. An investigation was not a conviction. A serious investigation that ran into powerful legal teams and strategic document management, and the particular resistance of institutions protecting their own, could become something that dragged on for years and resolved in ways that bore no relationship to what had actually happened. "What's missing?" she asked. "Internal documentation," he said. "We have the pattern. We have the financial records. We have testimony from 2 former Hale Consolidated employees who are willing to cooperate, but their exposure is limited. They knew pieces, not the whole picture." He paused. "What we don't have is direct evidence linking Hale personally to the instruction chain. He's insulated himself. Every directive that went out to the people doing the actual work was routed through 2 or 3 intermediaries." Sophia looked at her hands. "The intermediaries," she said. "Where are they?" "One left the company 8 months ago. We've been in contact. She's cooperative but frightened. She has some documentation, but not all of it." He paused. "The other one is still inside Hale Consolidated. He's not going to cooperate voluntarily." "Then you need something that connects the directives to Hale directly," Sophia said. "Something that couldn't have been sent by anyone else." "Yes. The timestamp pattern," she said slowly. "The transactions inside Vantage Capital, they weren't just structured to avoid audit detection. They were structured to create a specific kind of instability, the kind that would appear to an outside assessment to be the result of management failures." She looked up. "Whoever designed that structure knew exactly what kind of instability to create. That's not something a mid-level operative designs. That requires someone who understands the acquisition process from the inside out." Adrian was watching her. "If the design instruction exists somewhere," she said, "it's in the initial framing. Before the operatives were brought in, whoever told them what to create, they had to explain what they needed. That explanation is somewhere." "We've been looking for it for 7 months, Adrian said. "Where have you looked?" "Every external communication channel Hale uses that we've been able to access. Emails through his company servers, calendar records, third-party communication platforms his company has contracted with." He paused. "Nothing." "Because he's not using any of those," she said. He looked at her. "The timestamp pattern," she said again. "The transactions were entered from terminals inside the Vantage Capital building. But the access credentials that were used, they rotated on a schedule that didn't match any internal security protocol I've ever seen." She pulled out her phone and opened the analysis file, turning the screen toward him. "This rotation schedule. I spent 2 weeks trying to figure out what system would generate it. It's not random. It follows a pattern. See this every 43 hours. 43 hours exactly." Adrian leaned forward. His expression shifted. "That's a relay schedule," Marcus said from the front seat. Sophia turned. She hadn't realized he was in the car. "Automated relay," Marcus continued. "Like a dead drop. The credentials aren't being generated by a security protocol inside Vantage Capital. They're being transmitted to the operatives from an external source on a fixed schedule through a channel that's designed to look like internal system traffic." He paused. "That's sophisticated. That's not something you buy off a shelf." "No," Sophia said. "Someone built it, or commissioned it. And if it was commissioned, there's a contract, or a payment, or both." The car was quiet. "How did you see the 43-hour pattern?" Adrian asked. "I mapped every credential rotation against a timeline grid," she said. "I was trying to figure out the staffing schedule. I stumbled onto it." She paused. "I didn't know what I was looking at when I found it. I thought it was a coincidence until the 15th rotation, and then the probability of coincidence dropped to essentially 0. Adrian sat back. There was something in the way he was looking at her that she couldn't quite name. It was the second time she'd seen it. The first was when she told him about the single employee whose access log matched every transaction date. It was the look of someone recalibrating. "The relay system," he said. "If we can trace the transmission channel back to its origin." "That's the link to Hale," she said, "or to whoever commissioned it on his behalf." "Can you do it?" he asked. "Trace it." "Not alone," she said. "I need access to Vantage Capital's network logs from the inside. Not the sanitized audit version, the raw server logs before anything's been cleaned up. Vantage Capital is currently under a quiet SEC review, Marcus said. I can get access to the raw logs. 48 hours. Then in 48 hours, Sophia said, we find out where the relay was built. The raw logs arrived on a Thursday evening, transmitted through a channel Marcus had set up on her personal laptop using a VPN architecture she didn't fully understand, but trusted because every other technical decision he'd made had been exactly right. She had 48 hours to find what she needed before the SEC's review window closed and the logs were sealed. She started at 8 in the evening. By midnight, she had confirmed the relay schedule. It was even more precise than she'd calculated. The 43-hour interval was consistent to within seconds across 22 months of records. By 2 in the morning, she had found the origin IP. It was masked 3 layers deep, each layer routed through a different jurisdiction. But the masking had been applied 18 months ago, and for the 4 months before that, the transmissions had been routed through a single server address that the masking had failed to obscure in the earliest log records. The server address belonged to a data management company that Hale Consolidated had contracted with 4 years ago. She sat back and looked at the screen. Her hands were not shaking. She had trained herself out of visible reactions to significant findings. The excitement of discovery in her field was a luxury that people who wanted to be taken seriously could not afford. But her heart was doing something she couldn't stop. She typed a message to Adrian. I found the origin. It connects to a Hale Consolidated vendor. 4 years of contract records. If those contracts include technical specifications, his response came back almost immediately, despite the hour. They will. I have someone inside the vendor's legal team. She stared at the screen. You've been building to this for 4 years, she typed. Yes. Why? The 3 dots pulsed. She waited. Because the first company Hale destroyed belonged to someone I knew. She read the message twice. Then she typed, I'm sorry. Keep working, he said. We're almost there. She turned back to the logs. Almost. She worked through the night building the chain link by link, each piece connecting to the next, with the slow, irrefutable accumulation of evidence that she had spent her entire career learning to construct. By the time the sky outside her window began to lighten, she had mapped the relay system from the terminal inside the Vantage Capital building back through 3 jurisdictions to the origin server, and from the origin server to the contract records that bore the Hale Consolidated name. It wasn't everything. It was not the final conclusive airtight case that would end this cleanly. But it was the link that connected Victor Hale to what had been done. And it was enough to change the shape of the fight. She was about to close her laptop and get 2 hours of sleep before she needed to be at her desk performing normalcy with the precision she had spent the past week refining when her phone rang. Not a text. A call. Marcus. She picked up immediately. What happened? His voice was controlled, but she had learned Marcus's voice over 10 days of working beside him, and underneath the control was something tight. We have a problem. Tell me. Carter's report went to Hale's team last night, he said. We intercepted it through our inside source. And? She didn't clear you, he said. She flagged you as medium risk. She said your affect was too controlled in the meeting. She said someone who genuinely wasn't a threat would have been slightly less composed. Sophia closed her eyes. She was good enough to see through the performance, she said. She was good enough to see that there was a performance, Marcus said. She doesn't know what it was covering, but she flagged it. What does medium risk mean in their protocol? It means they'll move against you within 10 days, he said. They won't make it violent, too visible, too traceable. They'll move through professional channels, fabricated evidence of misconduct, whistleblower complaints, but in reverse, they'll plant something that makes you look like the problem. She opened her eyes. If they fabricate misconduct, I lose my license, she said. Yes. And without the license, I can't. You can't testify as a professional expert witness in any subsequent legal proceeding. Marcus paused. Which is the point. They don't need to stop the investigation at this stage. They just need to make sure you can't participate in it. The exhaustion she'd been holding at bay all night arrived all at once. She pressed the heel of her hand against her forehead and thought. 10 days. They needed 2 more weeks minimum. 10 days wasn't enough. Adrian needs to know, she said. I'm calling him next, Marcus said. I wanted you to hear it first. Why? A pause. Because it's your call to make, he said. Not his. She lowered her hand. What do you mean? He'll want to accelerate. Move with what we have. Go to the authorities now and hope it's enough. Marcus's voice was careful. But you found something tonight that changes the picture. Something we didn't have yesterday. If you need 2 more days to complete the link, I have it, she said. I have the relay origin and the contract connection. It's not the complete case, but it's the link. Then it might be enough, he said. But only if we move in the next 72 hours, before Hale's people do. The window was closing. Everything she'd built over 3 months, the quiet, careful, methodical architecture of a case that could actually hold up, was being compressed into 72 hours. Tell Adrian to call me, she said. She hung up. The city was just beginning to wake up outside. She could hear the specific early morning register of it deliveries a bus someone's alarm through a shared wall. The ordinary machinery of a day beginning. She looked at the screen, at the chain she'd spent the night building. She thought about the 7 companies, about the families that had watched what they built collapse around them, about Janet from the going away gathering 20 years with a company that could become someone else's target tomorrow if this didn't end. Her phone rang again. Adrian this time. She picked up before the second ring. I heard, she said. 72 hours, he said. His voice was different than it had been in the elevator, different than it had been in the car. Stripped of the careful measure he kept everything wrapped in. I want to hear what you found tonight. All of it. The relay origin, she said. The vendor contract. It connects. He was quiet for 2 full seconds. You're certain? I am. Another second of silence. Sophia. I know. We can do this, he said. Not a question. Not a motivation speech. Just the flat, honest certainty of someone who had been fighting this for 4 years and had just found the piece that made it possible. She looked at the screen one more time. 72 hours, she said. 72 hours, he said back. She closed her laptop, set her alarm for 6:30, and lay down on her couch with her coat still on. She was asleep in under 2 minutes. She had slept for 3 hours and 40 minutes. It didn't feel like enough, and it wasn't. But the alarm pulled her up at 6:30, and her body knew before her mind caught up that there was no time for the luxury of needing more. She was in the shower inside 2 minutes. Out of the shower in 4. Coffee running while she dressed, the laptop open on the kitchen table, the relay chain still there on the screen, exactly where she'd left it. She looked at it while she drank her coffee, standing at the counter. In the logic of financial investigation, what she had built overnight was what people in her field called a thread. Not the full case. Not the irrefutable package that made prosecutors feel comfortable and defense attorneys nervous. A thread, the specific, verifiable, documentable connection between a pattern of criminal activity and the person who authorized it. A thread that, pulled carefully, would unravel everything above it. She had found threads before. She knew what they felt like. This one felt different. Not because it was stronger than threads she'd found in the past, it was, but that wasn't the difference. The difference was the weight of what was attached to it. 7 companies. Hundreds of people. 4 years of Victor Hale operating inside a system that was supposed to catch exactly what he was doing, and the system looking the other way because the people responsible for looking were either bought or scared or simply not paying close enough attention. She finished her coffee, closed her laptop, and went to work. Thomas Reedy was already at his desk when she came off the elevator. She noticed in the specific way she had trained herself to notice things without appearing to notice them that he looked tired. His coffee cup was already half empty. He'd been there a while. She gave him the brief, polite smile of a colleague she didn't know well, and went to her office and opened her portfolio review of the Patterson logistics accounts and started working through page 41. 71 hours remaining. At 8:45, Adrian called her desk line, not her cell. Her office phone, the number listed in the company directory, the number that anyone monitoring her communications would expect to see used for professional contact. "Miss Bennett," he said, "this is Adrian Moretti. I believe we have a mutual contact at the Devereaux Group. I was hoping to schedule a brief call about a potential analytics consultation." Beautifully done. She recognized the cover immediately. The Devereaux Group was a real firm, a mid-size financial services company that had legitimate reasons to contract with analysts at her level. Adrian's name would mean nothing alarming on her call log. "Of course, Mr. Moretti," she said. "I have some availability this week. Could I reach you at this number?" "Please," he said. "This afternoon works well if you're free." "I'll make it work," she said. She hung up and looked through the glass panel at Thomas Reedy. He was typing. He might have been noting the call. He might have been doing something completely unrelated. She turned back to page 41. The call happened at 2 in the afternoon from a coffee shop 4 blocks from her building where she went on Wednesdays for the Wi-Fi and the plausible reason to be somewhere other than her desk. Adrian picked up on the first ring. "The vendor records," he said immediately. "My contact came through. We have the technical specifications from the original contract. They're detailed enough. The relay architecture is described in enough specificity that an independent technical analyst can match it to the system you identified in the Vantage Capital logs." She felt the shift in her chest that came with a case solidifying. "When can I see them?" "Tonight. Marcus will send them through the secure channel." He paused. "There's something else." His voice had changed. Not dramatically, but she had spent enough time listening to Adrian Moretti over the past 10 days to know the difference between the voice he used when things were going as planned and the voice he used when they weren't. "Tell me," she said. "Our inside source," he said. "The former Hale Consolidated employee who's been cooperating. Her name is Nadia. She called Marcus this morning." "Called him?" "She's been communicating only through written channels up to this point. She called, on a regular phone, unencrypted." He paused. She was scared enough that she stopped caring about protocol. Sophia set down her coffee cup. "What happened?" "Someone went to her apartment last night," he said. "Not to threaten her, to warn her. Someone inside Hale Consolidated, someone she trusted, someone she'd known for years, came to her door and told her that they knew she'd been in contact with outside parties, that the documentation she'd shared had been noticed." "That's not possible," Sophia said immediately. "The channel Marcus set up." "The channel is clean," Adrian said. "We've checked it twice. The breach didn't come from our side. Then it came from hers." "Yes," she thought. How does Hale's team know she shared documentation if the documentation itself hasn't surfaced anywhere visible? "They don't know what she shared," Adrian said. "They know she's been in contact. The person who warned her told her they'd flagged her communication patterns. She'd been accessing internal archives more frequently than her job required. Someone noticed." "An access pattern flag," Sophia said. "Not a content breach." "Right, they know she's been looking. They don't know what she found." "Does she still have the documentation?" "She has copies," he said. "She's held on to them. She's not stupid." "Is she going to run?" A brief silence. "She's thinking about it." "If she runs, we lose her testimony," Sophia said. "And depending on where she goes, we might lose the documentation too." "I know. Can you get to her?" "I'm going to her tonight," he said. "I need you to do something for me while I'm out." She waited. "The technical specifications from the vendor contract," he said. "I need you to match them to the relay architecture you identified, line by line. I need a document that a non-technical reader, A prosecutor, a judge, a journalist can look at and understand immediately. No jargon, no assumptions. The connection laid out so clearly that there's no question what they're looking at. How long do I have? I need it by 6 tomorrow morning. She did the calculation. The vendor's specifications were coming tonight. She had work she needed to complete at her actual job tomorrow, or the absence would be noticed. She would have from roughly 10 tonight until 5 in the morning. 7 hours. I'll have it by 5:30, she said. Thank you. She almost hung up and then didn't. Adrian? Yes. Nadia, she said. The person who warned her, the one inside Hale Consolidated who came to her apartment. That was a risk. Significant risk. Why would someone inside Hale's operation take that risk? He was quiet for a moment. Because not everyone inside a corrupt system is corrupt, he said. Some people are trapped. Some people are scared. Some people are waiting for someone to make it possible to do the right thing. She thought about that. Is that person an asset? If they're willing, he said. I'm going to find out tonight. The specifications arrived at 10:12. They were dense 83 pages of technical contract language from a data management vendor, the kind of document that was designed to be unreadable to anyone who wasn't a specialist, which was exactly the point. You buried the important details in the unreadable language and trusted that the people reviewing it would see what they were supposed to see and miss what they were supposed to miss. Sophia was not the people it had been designed to fool. She worked through it with the focused, methodical attention she brought to every complex document, flagging pages, cross-referencing against the relay architecture she'd mapped from the Vantage Capital Logs building, the comparison document in plain language, the way Adrian had asked. She wrote each connection as she found it, kept the language simple, made sure every claim was anchored to a specific page and section in the vendor contract and a specific entry in the server logs. She found the first match at 10:58. The second at 11:43. By 1 in the morning, she had 7 direct correspondences between the technical specifications in the contract and the relay architecture embedded in the Vantage Capital system. 7 distinct, specific, verifiable matches that could not be coincidental. At 1:15, her phone vibrated. Marcus. How's it going? 7 matches confirmed, she typed back. Still working through the back half of the contract. Adrian's with Nadia. She's agreed to stay. She exhaled. And the inside person? A pause. Then, name is James Carver. He's been with Hale Consolidated for 9 years. He's not going to testify to expose too many people who could hurt his family, but he gave Adrian something tonight. What? The 3 dots pulsed for almost 30 seconds. An email chain. Internal Hale Consolidated correspondence. 11 emails spanning 3 months. The subject line says Operational Review Patterson Logistics. Sophia's hands went still on the keyboard. Patterson Logistics. The portfolio she had been assigned after transferring off Vantage Capital. The routine review she had been working on for the past week and a half. The cover work she had been performing with half her attention, while the other half was pointed at everything else. Patterson Logistics is a target, she typed, was Marcus replied. The emails are dated 6 months ago. The operational review Hale's team conducted concluded that Patterson has a structural vulnerability in their subsidiary accounting, a vulnerability they created by placing one of their people on Patterson's internal audit team 14 months ago. 14 months ago. Before she had been assigned to Patterson. They've already run the same play, she typed. They built the vulnerability. Now they're waiting for the right moment to trigger it. Yes. And whoever triggered the review of Patterson's portfolio inside your company, whoever decided to assign you specifically to that audit? She saw it before he finished the sentence. They wanted me looking at Patterson, she typed. Not because they thought I was a threat. Because they needed someone competent enough to find and document the vulnerability they created, so they'd have an independent audit record they could use to validate the collapse when they triggered it. They were going to use your work, Marcus confirmed. Your name. Your professional credibility, as part of the mechanism to destroy another company. The room was very quiet around her. She had spent a week and a half reviewing Patterson Logistics with complete professional integrity, finding nothing unusual because what she was supposed to find hadn't been triggered yet. She had been doing exactly what she always did, building a careful, thorough, credible audit record, which was exactly what they needed her to build. Her professional reputation, the reputation she'd spent 6 years building review by careful review, had been selected as a tool, not because she was dangerous, because she was trusted. She felt something move through her that was not quite anger and not quite nausea. It was the specific clarifying sensation of understanding exactly how completely you've been played and having to make a choice in that moment about what to do with the understanding. She turned back to the vendor specifications, and she kept working. She sent the completed document to Adrian at 5:22 in the morning. 42 pages. Plain language. Every correspondence between the relay architecture and the technical specifications identified, cited, and explained. A prosecutor would be able to walk into a room with it and have what they needed for the first hour of a 3-hour argument. She made coffee and stood at her window in the early morning gray and thought about Patterson Logistics, about the families who had built it, about whether she was going to be the mechanism by which it was destroyed. Adrian called at 5:45. "I got it," he said. "It's exactly what we needed." "There's something else," she said, and she told him about Patterson, about the 14-month play, the planted vulnerability, the way they'd positioned her audit as the instrument. He listened without interrupting. When she finished, he was quiet for a moment. "You're angry," he said. "I'm past angry," she said. "I'm at the point past angry where things become very clear." "Tell me what's clear." "They've been running this the same way every single time," she said. "Same structure, same mechanism, same exploitation of the systems that are supposed to prevent exactly this. And the reason it's worked 7 times..." She stopped, restarted. "The reason it's worked is because the people involved were never looking at the whole picture. Every auditor, every analyst, every regulator who touched any piece of this only ever saw their piece. Nobody ever saw it end to end. Until you," he said. "Until both of us," she said. A pause. "The document you built tonight changes what we can do in the next 48 hours, he said. "I've reached out to 2 people, a federal prosecutor and an investigative journalist. Both of them have been building separate cases around Hale's activities. Separate, incomplete cases. What you built tonight is the piece that connects both of their pictures." "When are you meeting them?" "Tomorrow," he said. "Tonight, actually, it's already tomorrow." A brief pause. "I want you there." She hadn't expected that. "I'm a corporate analyst. I'm not..." "You built the document," he said. "You understand every line of it. If they have questions, and they will have questions, I need someone in that room who can answer them without having to defer and come back later." He paused. "And I need someone in that room who found this independently, without a personal stake in the outcome." "I have a personal stake now," she said. "Not the same kind," he said. "You're not doing this because someone took something from you. You're doing it because it's wrong." Another pause, shorter. "That matters. To the kind of people we're meeting with, that matters a lot." She looked out the window. The city was starting to move. The first buses, the earliest commuters, the delivery trucks that kept everything stocked and running. The ordinary machinery of a place that mostly worked because most people were mostly trying to do things right. "What time?" she said. 7 tonight. I'll send Marcus with a car." "All right." She was about to hang up when he said, "Sophia." "Yes." "What they tried to do with Patterson..." He stopped, started again. "I know what it feels like to have something you built used against you. Used as the mechanism. It's a particular kind of violation." She was quiet. "I just want you to know," he said, "that what you found, what you built tonight, that's going to be the thing that ends this, not what they tried to make it." She didn't answer immediately. "Get some sleep," she said finally. "You too." She put the phone down and looked at the document still open on her laptop. 42 pages. The architecture of a crime laid out in plain language so that anyone with eyes could see it. She closed the laptop and went to get ready for the day she still had to perform. Thomas Reedy was not at his desk when she arrived. She noticed immediately the empty desk had the specific quality of a recently vacated space, the monitor not yet fully dimmed, the coffee cup still present. She kept moving, sat down, opened her work. She didn't text Marcus. If Thomas's absence meant something, she'd hear about it through the right channel. She heard about it at 9:10. Marcus Thomas Reedy was pulled from the building this morning. Not by his cover employer, by Hale's people directly. Something changed in their assessment overnight. She stared at the message. What changed? We're not sure, but they're not monitoring your office anymore, which means they've either decided you're not a threat, or they've decided monitoring is no longer the priority. Yes. She set her phone down carefully. The shift from monitoring to something else was not an upgrade in her safety. It was the opposite. When they were monitoring her, they wanted information. The moment information became less important than action, the calculation changed. She typed, "Does Adrian know?" "He knows. He's moved the meeting up. 6 tonight instead of 7. He's also changed the location. Where he'll tell you himself. He's calling you in 5 minutes." She put her phone in her lap and looked at her screen and counted. Adrian called in 4. "Change of plans," he said. His voice was the stripped-down version again, the one she'd heard at 5 in the morning, nothing extra in it. "Marcus told me about Reedy," she said. "Reedy pulling out means they've made a decision," he said. "I don't know yet what the decision is, but there are only 2 options. They've either assessed you as clean and moved their attention elsewhere, or they've decided that whatever you know doesn't matter anymore, because they're moving on Patterson today." The floor dropped slightly under her. Today. The vulnerability they built into Patterson's accounts, it can be triggered remotely. If they trip it today, the instability will start showing in Patterson's financials within 24 hours. By the time anyone can investigate, the collapse will look like natural failure. Your audit record will be in the file as confirmation. "They're not waiting for my audit to be completed," she said. "They don't need it completed. They just need it started. A credible auditor's preliminary review showing nothing unusual, followed by a collapse, that's exactly the narrative they need." "Can we warn Patterson?" "Already done. I reached their board chair an hour ago. They're pulling their financials offline and initiating an internal freeze. It'll slow the trigger mechanism." He paused. "But it also signals to Hale's team that someone is inside the play." "How long does the freeze buy us?" "Hours," he said. "Not days." She thought fast. "The meeting tonight, the prosecutor and the journalist. If we get them the document tonight, the prosecutor can initiate an emergency filing," he said. "It won't stop Hale immediately, but it creates a legal record that makes anything he does in the next 48 hours traceable and prosecutable. The journalist can publish a preliminary piece within 6 hours of receiving the material, not the full story, but enough to put his name in a headline. A headline changes his cost calculation," she said. Significantly, she looked at her screen. At the Patterson Logistics file open in front of her, the careful, thorough audit she had been building for a week and a half with complete integrity, in complete ignorance of how it was meant to be used. "Send me the new meeting location," she said. "Already sent. Marcus has the car." "I'll be ready." She hung up and sat for exactly 30 seconds breathing steadily, getting her mind around the shape of the day in front of her. Then, she opened the Patterson Logistics file and started writing. If her audit was going to be in that file, she was going to make sure it said exactly what she needed it to say. At 12:30, Richard came to her office. He knocked, which he didn't always do, and his expression when he came in was different from the professional ease it usually carried. He sat down across from her, which he also didn't usually do, and he looked at her for a moment before he spoke. "I need to ask you something," he said, "and I need you to be honest with me." She met his eyes. "All right." "The Patterson Logistics Review," he said. "Have you found anything outside the normal parameters?" The question landed carefully in the room between them. She looked at him. Richard Cho, 52 years old, 24 years. With this company, a man who had always treated her with the consistent respect of someone who recognized competence when he saw it. A man who had once told her in passing over coffee in the break room that the thing he valued most in an analyst was intellectual honesty. She had trusted him as much as she trusted anyone here. Carefully, within understood limits. She made a decision. "Yes," she said. He was very still. "Tell me." "I found an access pattern in the subsidiary accounting," she said. "It's subtle. The kind of thing you'd miss on a standard review unless you were specifically looking for it." She paused. "I was specifically looking for it." "Because of Vantage Capital," he said. The room went very quiet. She looked at him steadily. "How long have you known?" "Long enough to be careful," he said. "Long enough to know that the Vantage Capital transfer you requested wasn't about workload balance." He paused. "Long enough to make sure that your assignment to Patterson came from me and not from someone else who requested it." She stared at him. "You put me on Patterson." "I put you on Patterson," he confirmed, "because I needed someone I could trust on it. And then I waited to see what you'd find." "Richard, I know," he said. "I should have come to you directly. I didn't because I didn't know the full scope of it, and I didn't want to put you in a position without understanding what I was putting you into." He met her gaze. "I've been watching this pattern for almost a year. I didn't know what it connected to. I only knew that something was wrong inside the accounts I was being asked to assign for review." "Being asked by who?" "Leslie Carter," he said. "She came to me 3 months ago with a list of recommended portfolio assignments. It was framed as a strategic initiative, better resource allocation, cross-training opportunity. I accepted it because I had no reason not to." Leslie Carter had given Richard the assignment list, which meant Hale's people hadn't just placed Sophia on Patterson, they had run the directive through her own supervisor using the legitimate language of organizational management, keeping every step looking clean. "She gave you the list," Sophia said slowly. "And one of the portfolios on the list was Patterson Logistics." "Yes." "But you didn't assign it the way she suggested," Sophia said. "You assigned it to me." "She suggested 3 analysts," he said. "You weren't on her list. I substituted." Something settled in her chest. "Why me?" "Because the other 3 analysts on her list," he said, "are people I would trust to do a competent review and miss exactly what they were supposed to miss. And I didn't want a competent review that missed what it was supposed to miss." He looked at her. "I wanted you." She sat back. In the architecture of what had been building over the past 10 days, the relay chain, the vendor specifications, the document she'd built overnight, the meetings tonight, she had not accounted for this, for the possibility that the person positioned closest to her had been running a parallel version of the same instinct. "You've been sitting on this for a year," she said. "I didn't know what to do with it," he said simply. "I'm an operations manager. I know finance. I don't know how to fight this kind of thing." "Do you trust me?" she said. "That's why I'm in your office," he said. She looked at him for 3 full seconds. Then she opened the bottom drawer of her desk and took out the folder she'd printed that morning, 20 pages, the core of the document she'd sent Adrian, stripped of the most sensitive sourcing, still enough to make the picture clear. She set it on the desk between them. "Read it," she said. "You have about 4 minutes before someone notices how long you've been in here." He picked up the folder and read. He was a fast reader. She'd always known that. He went through the 20 pages in 3.5 minutes, his face doing the specific thing that faces did when something you suspected turned out to be larger than you'd feared. Not shock. Something quieter than shock. The particular compression of someone absorbing a thing they wish they didn't have to know. He set the folder down. "What do you need from me?" he said. "Tonight," she said. If anyone asks about my location after 4 o'clock, I had a client meeting that ran long. You spoke to me at 3:15, and I mentioned it." "Done," he said. "And the Patterson audit record," she said. "My preliminary. It needs to be stored under a secure flag, not the standard archive. Can you do that?" "I can flag it as pending additional review," he said. "It'll sit in a review queue that doesn't have automatic external access." "Good. Flag it today." He stood taking the folder with him. She didn't stop him. He'd need to read it again properly at his own desk, and she trusted him with it more than she'd trusted him with anything in 4 years. "Sophia," he said at the door. She looked up. "Whatever happens tonight," he said, "I want you to know that what you've done here, the way you've handled this, it's the thing this job is supposed to be for." She didn't answer immediately. "Go flag the Patterson file," she said, "and get out of my doorway before Thomas Reedy's replacement shows up." He almost smiled. He went. She turned back to her screen. 2 hours and 40 minutes until Marcus picked her up. She kept working. The car arrived at 3:58. Marcus drove. She sat in the back with a laptop going over the document one final time. Tightening language, making 2 additions based on what Richard had told her about the assignment list. The chain of command by which Sophia had been placed on Patterson was now 3 layers of documented, each layer reinforcing the others. At 4:45 the car stopped. Not at a restaurant, not at an office building. At a building she recognized. She'd passed it 100 times without giving it specific attention, the kind of building that occupied its block with a deliberate absence of anything notable. Marcus walked her inside without explanation. 3rd floor. A room with a long table and 6 chairs and 2 people she'd never met, who introduced themselves without titles. The woman said her name was Patricia. The man said his name was Robert. Patricia had the look of someone who had spent decades in rooms like this one distilling complicated things into language that held up under pressure. Robert had a different quality, quieter, more observational. The quality of someone whose job was to make sources trust them enough to tell the truth. Adrian was already there. He looked at her when she came in, and the look said, "You ready?" She sat down. "Let's start," she said. Patricia opened a notepad. Robert put a recorder on the table, looked at Sophia, and waited for her nod. She nodded. And then Sophia Bennett, corporate investigator, 27 years old, who had found the edge of something 3 months ago and made the choice to stay instead of run. She started talking. She laid it out from the beginning. The Vantage Capital audit, the timestamp pattern, the quiet transfer, and the 3 months of watching. The elevator, Adrian, the document board on the 43rd floor. The relay architecture, the vendor specifications, the 42 pages she had built overnight that connected all of it. She talked about Leslie Carter and Thomas Reedy and Patterson Logistics and Richard Cho and Nadia and James Carver and the 7 companies before all of this that had been stripped and dissolved, while everyone who might have stopped it saw only their own piece of the picture and not the whole. She talked for an hour and 40 minutes. Patricia asked questions throughout, sharp, specific, occasionally skeptical, in ways that Sophia answered with citations and page numbers and source documentation. Robert listened with the focused stillness of someone building something in real time. At 6:25, Patricia set down her pen and looked at Sophia across the table. "The vendor specification match," she said. "You're prepared to testify to this?" "Yes," Sophia said. "And the relay architecture documentation, this is from raw server logs you accessed directly. From a log set I accessed directly with authorized credentials during an active SEC review window," she said. "The access is documented and legal." Patricia nodded slowly. "If I initiate an emergency filing tonight," she said, "it creates a legal record. It doesn't immediately stop Hale from completing whatever he's attempting with Patterson." "No," Sophia said. "But it changes his cost calculation. It makes everything he does in the next 48 hours traceable." "And the journalist piece?" Patricia looked at Robert. 6 hours. Robert said. "I can have something online in 6 hours. Not the full story, but his name, the allegation, the basic structure. Enough to create a public record before he can bury this through legal channels." Patricia looked at Adrian. "You've been building this for 4 years." "Yes," he said. "And you're prepared to be named as a cooperating source." "Yes." She looked at the document Sophia had sent, 42 pages, printed and annotated in Patricia's handwriting throughout the conversation. "This is the best documented predatory acquisition case I've seen in 11 years of federal work," she said. The room was quiet. "Then let's move," Sophia said. Nobody argued. Patricia picked up her phone and stepped out of the room. Robert began typing on his laptop fast. Adrian looked across the table at Sophia. She met his eyes. There was something in his face that she hadn't seen before. Not relief, not satisfaction, nothing simple enough to name easily. It was the specific quality of a person who has been carrying something for a very long time and feels for the first time the possibility of setting it down. She understood it completely. Her own phone vibrated. She looked at the screen. Marcus. "We have a problem. Patterson Logistics Board Chair just called. Someone accessed their systems in the last 20 minutes. They didn't just trigger the vulnerability, they accelerated it. Whatever Hale's team did, they didn't wait." She read it twice. Then she looked up at Adrian. "They moved," she said. His jaw tightened. "How fast?" "Fast enough that the freeze didn't hold." She stood. "Patricia needs to know. The filing needs to happen tonight, not tomorrow, tonight." Adrian was already moving toward the door. She followed him. In the hallway, Patricia was still on her phone. She looked at them when they came through the door, read their faces, and said into the phone, "I need to call you back. Get me the duty magistrate." She hung up. "How bad?" she said. "Bad enough that we can't wait," Adrian said. Patricia looked at him, then at Sophia. Her expression was the expression of someone who had spent a career making judgment calls under pressure and was making one now. "Give me 30 minutes, she said. She went back to her phone. Sophia stood in that hallway with her heart beating against her ribs and the accumulated weight of 3 months pressing down on her from every direction, and she made herself stand very still and breathe at a normal rate and think clearly about the next 30 minutes. 30 minutes. She'd held secrets for 3 months. She could hold 30 minutes. Her phone vibrated again. She looked at the screen expecting Marcus. The number was blocked. She answered. The voice on the other end was one she had never heard before. Male. Calm. The specific processed calm of someone who had decided exactly what they were going to say before they picked up the phone. "Miss Bennett," the voice said. "My name isn't important, but I think it's important that you understand something before the next hour unfolds." A pause. "You've worked very hard. You've found more than we expected. That's genuinely impressive." Another pause. "But you should know that the evidence you've assembled, the relay documentation, the vendor specifications, they're in an encrypted file that you sent at 5:22 this morning to an email address registered to Adrian Moretti." She went very still. "We've had that file for 4 hours, the voice said, "and we have the technical capability to demonstrate convincingly that it was fabricated." The hallway was very quiet around her. "That's a lie," she said. "Of course it is," the voice said pleasantly. "But we have very good lawyers, and fabricated evidence challenges take time to resolve. Months, sometimes years." He paused. "Long enough for everything you're trying to protect to be gone." She didn't answer. "I'm not calling to threaten you," the voice said. "I'm calling because there's a simpler path. The Patterson Logistics file you've been building, flag it as inconclusive. Step back from the review. Go home tonight and don't attend whatever meeting you're currently attending." A pause. "And this becomes a problem that resolves itself without touching your career, your license, or the people you've involved in this." She thought about the 7 companies, about the families, about Nadia, who had been scared enough to break protocol and call on an unencrypted phone, About James Carver, who had risked everything to bring an email chain to a man he trusted because something in him couldn't keep quiet anymore. About Richard reading 20 pages in 4 minutes in her office asking, "What do you need from me?" She thought about Adrian 4 years of carrying this. She thought about the first company, the one that had belonged to someone he knew. "You should know something," she said into the phone. "I'm listening," the voice said. "I sent that file to Adrian Moretti at 5:22 this morning," she said. "I also sent it to 2 other addresses, at 5:23, addresses that aren't registered to anyone you've been watching." She paused. "If you've had that file for 4 hours and you haven't found the other 2 copies, you're not as far ahead of this as you think you are." A silence. Not long. 2 seconds. But in the specific grammar of this kind of conversation, 2 seconds of silence from someone who called to deliver a threat was an entire sentence. "I'd encourage you to reconsider," the voice said. "I'd encourage you," Sophia said, "to get a very good lawyer." She hung up. Her hands were not shaking. She looked at her phone for a moment. Then she opened a message to Marcus and typed, "Check the secure copies. Make sure they're intact and that the access logs show no unauthorized entry." His response came back in 40 seconds. "Both intact. No unauthorized access. The file they have is the version you sent through the primary channel. We can verify the send metadata proves origin." She exhaled. She had not been bluffing about the second and third copies. She had sent them at 5:23 to addresses she had established for exactly this contingency 3 days ago. She had not told Adrian about them. She had not told Marcus. She had set them up alone at 4 in the morning because she had spent 6 years learning that the people who built single-point dependencies into their most important work were the people who watched their most important work disappear. She turned back toward the room where Robert was still typing. Patricia came back down the hallway, phone in hand, looking at Sophia with an expression that had sharpened into something operational. "The duty magistrate is available," she said. "I'm filing in 20 minutes. "There's something you need to know first," Sophia said. She told her about the call. Patricia listened without interrupting. When Sophia finished, she was quiet for exactly 3 seconds. Then she said, "They called you directly." "Yes." "That means they're scared," Patricia said. "People with unassailable positions don't make calls like that." "I know," Sophia said. "The fabrication claim is demonstrable as false through send metadata and the integrity of the secondary copies," Sophia said. "I can have the technical documentation to you within the hour." Patricia looked at her steadily. "You set up secondary copies 3 days ago." A pause. "You didn't tell Adrian?" "No." Patricia almost smiled. It was the smile of someone who had spent a career in rooms where people underestimated the quiet ones. "All right," she said. "Let's go file." She turned toward the stairs. Sophia looked back at the door to the room where Adrian was waiting. She pushed it open. He was on his feet, already reading her face. "They called me," she said. "Directly. Threatened to claim the evidence was fabricated." His expression went hard. "Are you?" "I'm fine," she said. "The copies are secure. Patricia is filing in 20 minutes. She met his eyes. "It's moving." He looked at her for a moment. The stripped-down quality was still in his face, but underneath it now was something that hadn't been there before, something that was going to take her a while to fully name. "You're extraordinary," he said. It came out plain, not a compliment deployed for effect, just a fact stated by someone who was not in the habit of stating facts he didn't mean. She felt it land. "We're not done yet," she said. "No," he said, "but we're close." She nodded once, and they went to finish it. Patricia filed at 8:47 in the evening. Sophia knew the exact moment it happened because Marcus sent a single word. Done. She was sitting in the back of the car with Adrian stopped in traffic 6 blocks from the building where they'd spent the last 2 hours, and she read the message and felt something shift in the architecture of everything. Not relief, not yet nothing that simple, but the specific sensation of a door closing behind you. The kind that locks from the inside. The filing existed now in the federal system. It had a case number. It had Patricia's name on it, and Sophia's documentation attached to it, and the particular legal weight of a federal prosecutor who had spent 11 years building cases like this, deciding that this one was worth her name. You couldn't unfiled something. Victor Hale's legal team could challenge it. They could delay it. They could deploy every resource available to a man with his money and his connections to slow it, complicate it, bury it under procedural motion after procedural motion until everyone involved was exhausted. But they couldn't make it not exist. "It's filed," she said. Adrian was looking at his own phone. "I know." He put the phone in his pocket. "Robert's piece goes up in 4 hours. What does it say?" "Enough," he said. He was careful. He didn't publish anything we can't support with documentation. The vendor specifications, the relay architecture, the connection to the 7 prior acquisitions. He named Hale directly. He named the companies. He paused. "He named you." She looked at him. "Me." "As the analyst who identified the pattern," he said. "He asked me if that was all right. I told him it wasn't my decision. It wasn't. She understood that. And she understood what it meant. Her name in a piece like this, before the full case was resolved, was a different kind of exposure than anything she'd navigated in the past 3 months. Professional exposure. Her company would see it. Every client who had ever trusted her with a complex audit would see it. Everyone who had ever questioned whether a 27-year-old woman could do the kind of work she'd been doing would see it and form an opinion about which side of this she should have been on. She thought about it for 10 seconds. "It's all right," she said. Adrian nodded once. The car moved forward. The city pressed around them in its usual indifferent density. Thousands of people going home or going out or going somewhere that had nothing to do with what was unfolding in the documents and filings and draft articles that were moving through digital channels right now at a speed that the paper and phone world of 20 years ago would have found incomprehensible. "What does Hale do now?" she said. Adrian was quiet for a moment. "He has 3 options," he said. "He can go quiet, shut down the Patterson trigger, pull his people back, hope the filing doesn't have enough to survive a challenge. He can fight it full legal deployment, challenge everything, try to make the documentation look manufactured." He paused. "Or he can move. Fast. Try to complete the Patterson acquisition before the filing generates enough momentum to stop him. Which one does he choose?" "He's been running this operation for 4 years," Adrian said. "He doesn't go quiet. It's not in his character. Going quiet means accepting that someone outmaneuvered him, and he's not capable of accepting that." He paused. "He fights. And while he's fighting legally, he keeps moving operationally. Both tracks at once. Then Patterson is still at risk tonight." "Patterson is still at risk tonight," he confirmed. She processed that. The board chair froze the accounts. The vulnerability they built into the subsidiary accounting, can it be triggered on a frozen system? "Not through normal channels," Marcus said from the front seat. "But the relay system Sophia found, it doesn't operate through normal channels. It operates through the access credential rotation. If Hale's people still have active credentials cycling through that system, a freeze on the public-facing accounts doesn't necessarily stop a targeted intervention at the server level." Sophia's mind moved through it quickly. "The raw server logs," she said. "The Vantage Capital logs I accessed, the relay system I identified was embedded at the server level, not the application level. The board chair's freeze operates at the application level." "Correct," Marcus said. "Can we warn the board chair to initiate a server-level shutdown?" "I can call him right now," Adrian said. "Call him," Sophia said. Adrian was already dialing. She listened to his side of the conversation, brief, direct, specific. He explained what they needed without explaining why, which was the right call. The board chair didn't need the full picture at 11 o'clock at night in the middle of a crisis. He needed the action item. The call lasted 4 minutes. "He's doing it," Adrian said. "He's pulling the server architecture offline. It'll take about 30 minutes. "Does that stop the trigger?" "It stops the remote trigger," Marcus said. If someone physically inside Patterson's infrastructure wanted to execute it manually, that's a different problem. But Hale's operatives aren't inside the building tonight. I've had eyes on the location since 3 o'clock. Why? Because when they pulled Reedy out of your building this morning, I figured they'd redirect resources, Marcus said. I wanted to know where. And 3 of them repositioned to the block around Patterson's building. They've been stationary since 4:30. She stared at the back of his head. You've been watching Patterson since 4:30, and you didn't tell me. You were in a meeting that needed your full attention, he said simply. Nothing had changed at Patterson yet. She exhaled. What are they doing, the 3 people outside Patterson's building? Waiting, he said, for confirmation that the trigger executed. When the confirmation doesn't come, which it won't, because the server is going offline, they'll report back. And then Hale makes his next decision. She turned to Adrian. When he finds out the trigger failed and the filing exists, and Robert's piece is going up in 4 hours. He escalates, Adrian said. To what? Adrian looked at her. The look was direct, and held something in it that she'd been seeing more of over the past few days, a willingness to be honest with her about things he might have softened for someone else. To whatever he thinks can still change the outcome, he said. At this stage with legal exposure, this significant, the only thing that changes the outcome for him is undermining the evidence. Not challenging it in court, destroying it before it can be used. The car went quiet. He'd go after the copies, she said. He'd go after the sources, Adrian said. The documentation can be replicated. The people who can testify to what it means, those are harder to replace. She understood what he was saying. Nadia, Patricia, Sophia herself. Marcus, she said. Already in motion, he said. Nadia has been relocated as of 6 o'clock tonight. Patricia has federal protective protocols. She activated them when she filed. The copies you made. He paused. The ones you didn't tell me about. A beat of silence. They're secure, she asked. Both intact. I found them at 9:15. Another pause. You set them up 3 days ago. Yes. Before you told Adrian about the relay origin. Yes. Why didn't you tell me? She looked at the back of his head. Marcus, who had rerouted her digital trail in an afternoon and monitored her meeting with Leslie Carter and positioned a car at a side entrance inside 8 minutes. Marcus, who had been the most technically precise person she had ever worked beside. Because the copies weren't operational intelligence, she said. They were insurance. Insurance only works if the people who might want to neutralize it don't know it exists. A pause. You didn't trust me. I trusted you completely, she said, which is why I trusted you to understand why I didn't tell you. Another silence. Then, that's either the most paranoid thing I've ever heard, or the smartest. Both, Adrian said quietly. Marcus made a sound that might have been a laugh. Both, he agreed. They dropped her at her building at 9:45. She had expected Adrian to tell her to stay inside, lock the door, wait for the situation to resolve itself at whatever pace federal filings and published journalism resolved things. She had prepared herself to push back on that. She had 3 months of investment in this case, and she was not going to spend the most critical night of it locked in her apartment watching her phone. He didn't say any of that. What he said when the car stopped and she reached for the door was, "Get what you need. We're moving again at 11. She looked at him. Where? There's a location, he said. A building Hale's company owns through a subsidiary. It's where James Carver told us the Central Archive is maintained. The archive. The operational records, he said. Not the financial records, those are distributed through the shell structures. The operational records. The instructions, the timelines, the internal documentation of every acquisition. 4 years of it. She sat very still. That's not in the filing. No, he said. What's in the filing is the financial chain, the vendor connection. That's enough to open the investigation. It's not enough to close it. He paused. The operational archive is what closes it. It's what makes the full picture undeniable. Every company, every instruction, every directive with Hale's fingerprints on it. And you know where it is. Carver gave us the location, he said. Tonight. Tonight, she repeated. Why tonight? If the filing exists, if the investigation opens. Because Hale knows we have the financial chain, Adrian said. He'll know within the hour if he doesn't already. And the first thing he does when he understands the scope of what we've filed is protect whatever he can still protect. The operational archive is the thing he protects first. He looked at her steadily. We have a window. Small one. If we move before he does, we get the archive before he destroys it, she said, or moves it somewhere we'll never find it. She looked at him. This is outside anything I'm professionally qualified to do. You're not going in as an analyst, he said. You're going as the person who understands what the archive contains and can verify its integrity on site. So we know what we're taking before we take it. Who else is going? Marcus. 2 people I trust. And someone from Patricia's office. She has an agent she can authorize for an on-site evidence preservation. He paused. Everything legal. Everything documented. No part of this compromises the chain of custody. She looked at the building in front of her. Her building. The lobby she'd walked into and out of 100 times the elevator. She never thought about the apartment on the 9th floor, where her kitchen table had absorbed 3 months of this. She thought about the 7 companies. About Patterson Logistics and the board chair pulling his server architecture offline at 10 o'clock at night because a man he'd spoken to for 4 minutes on the phone had given him a specific credible reason to. About Nadia relocated. About James Carver, who had risked everything to bring an email chain to someone he thought could do something with it. About Richard reading 20 pages in 4 minutes, asking, "What do you need from me?" 11 o'clock, she said. 11 o'clock, Adrian confirmed. She got out of the car. She had an hour and 15 minutes. She changed her clothes, practical, dark, nothing that would stand out. She ate something standing at her kitchen counter because she couldn't remember if she'd eaten since the coffee at 5:30 in the morning, and she was not going to be useful to anyone if she ran out of whatever was keeping her functional. She checked the secure channel on her laptop and confirmed both copies were still intact. Then she sat at her kitchen table for 11 minutes and did something she hadn't done in 3 months. She let herself feel it. Not the fear she'd been managing fear long enough that it had become almost structural, something she operated around rather than in. Not the anger which was always there, but had been refined over 3 months into something too precise to be called anger anymore. She let herself feel the weight of what was happening tonight, the scale of it. The fact that she had walked into an elevator 72 hours ago, a different version of 72 hours ago, it felt like as someone who had been carrying a secret alone for 3 months. And she was walking out of her apartment tonight as someone who had built a federal case from the inside out with her own hands. She thought about the version of herself who had sat at this table the night she found the Vantage Capital discrepancy. Scared, certain that staying quiet was the only viable option. Convinced that the cost of speaking was higher than the cost of silence. That version of herself had been wrong. Not because speaking was safe, it wasn't. The phone call she'd received tonight, the careful, pleasant voice telling her that her evidence could be made to look fabricated, that was the cost of speaking. And there were going to be more costs. The next weeks were going to be professionally difficult in ways she could anticipate and ways she couldn't. But that version of herself at the kitchen table had made one error in the cost calculation. She had only counted what speaking would cost her. She hadn't counted what silence would cost everyone else. She stood up. She checked her phone. 11 minutes left. She put her laptop in her bag. Tut. Marcus arrived at 10:58. He was alone in the car this time. She got in the front seat, which surprised him slightly. She could see it in the brief adjustment of his expression, but he didn't comment. She'd spent 3 months working from the back seat of a situation. She was done with that positioning. "Adrian," she said. "Meeting us there," Marcus said. He had to deal with something. What something? Marcus pulled into traffic before answering. Hale's legal team filed a motion 40 minutes ago. Emergency injunction to suppress the federal filing, arguing that the documentation was obtained through unauthorized access to proprietary systems. She felt the spike of it. That's a reference to the Vantage Capital logs. Yes. The access was authorized, she said immediately. I accessed those logs through an active SEC review window with legitimate credentials. I know, Marcus said. Patricia knows. She's responding to the injunction tonight. But Adrian needed to be on a call with her and her supervising attorney. The injunction won't succeed, Sophia said. No, Marcus said. But it's going to absorb the next 6 hours of everyone's attention, which is the point. While Patricia's people are dealing with the injunction, Hale's operational people are dealing with the archive. Which is why we're moving tonight, she said. Which is exactly why we're moving tonight, he said. She looked at her phone. No message from Adrian yet. He's not going to make it to the location, is he? Marcus was quiet for a beat. He'll try. But if the call with Patricia runs long, then we proceed without him, Marcus said. He anticipated that possibility. The two people he trusted are already at the location. Patricia's agent is meeting us there. She absorbed that. Marcus. Yeah. The first company Hale destroyed, she said. The one that belonged to someone Adrian knew. Do you know who it was? The car was quiet for a moment. His uncle, Marcus said. Daniel Moretti built a mid-size import business over 30 years. 3 years ago, Hale ran the same play, planted vulnerability, triggered the collapse, acquired the assets for 20 cents on the dollar. He paused. Daniel died 8 months after the company collapsed. Heart attack. He was 61. She looked at the windshield. Adrian was the one who found him, Marcus said. He was the first person at the hospital. He sat with his family for 2 days. Another pause. He started building the case 6 weeks after the funeral. 4 years of it. 4 years of building this piece by piece, following the trail from his uncle's company through 7 others to the relay architecture inside Vantage Capital, waiting for the piece that made it all hold together. And the piece had been a 27-year-old corporate analyst who found a timestamp anomaly on a Tuesday afternoon and made the decision to stay quiet and keep watching instead of running. She didn't say anything. There was nothing to say. The building was a 12-story commercial property in a neighborhood that was between what it used to be and what it was in the process of becoming. Hale Consolidated held it through a subsidiary that held it through another subsidiary, the kind of ownership structure that was designed to make the connection invisible on any standard property search. Marcus had found it through the vendor contract records. The data management company that had built the relay system maintained a co-location server facility inside the building. The operational archive, according to James Carver, lived on air-gapped servers in a secured room on the 9th floor. Air-gapped meant not connected to any external network. It meant no remote access. It meant you could not reach it through any of the channels that Hale's people had been monitoring. It also meant that if Hale wanted to destroy it tonight, someone had to physically go to that room. Patricia's agent, a woman who introduced herself only as Chen, was already there when Marcus and Sophia arrived. She was compact, efficient, the quality of someone accustomed to operating in conditions where efficiency wasn't optional. 2 men, Sophia didn't know, were with her. She looked at them and understood without being told that these were the people Adrian trusted. The way he trusted Marcus and Delia, with the particular accumulated tested trust that came from years of shared work in situations where the cost of misplaced trust was very high. One of them, the taller one, introduced himself as Paul. Adrian, Sophia asked him. Still on the call, Paul said. He said to move. Then we move, she said. Chen looked at her steadily for a moment, the specific assessment of someone measuring a person against the function they're supposed to perform. You're the one who can verify the archive's integrity. Yes. You understand what we're looking for. Operational records, Sophia said. The instruction chain. Internal documentation of every acquisition. It'll be organized by company name and date. I know what the financial fingerprints of each acquisition look like. I can verify that what we're taking is what we think it is. Chen nodded. Stay close. Don't touch anything I haven't cleared. Understood. They went in. The building's public floors were quiet at this hour, and they moved through them the way people who belonged there moved, not quickly, not furtively, with the specific purposeful pace of people on their way somewhere. Chen had credentials for the elevator that accessed floors 8 through 12. The elevator was smaller than it looked from the outside. Sophia stood in it and thought about a different elevator 72 hours ago, and the man who had asked her why she hadn't told anyone what she found. She had an answer to that question that she hadn't given him in the moment. She'd stayed quiet because she was afraid. Not of losing her job, not of her career. She had been afraid of exactly this, of the weight of it. Of becoming the person who knew too much to look away, who had walked too far into the truth to pretend the door behind her was still open. She had been afraid of becoming someone who couldn't stop. She wasn't afraid of that anymore. The elevator opened on 9. Thug. The secured room was behind a keycard access panel that Chen bypassed with equipment Sophia had not been told about and did not ask about. The door opened. They went in. It was a climate-controlled server room. 3 racks of hardware. The air-gapped system was on the far rack, physically isolated from the other equipment. No network ports, a standalone terminal beside it, with a keyboard and a monitor that was currently dark. Paul activated the terminal. Sophia stood in front of it and started working. The archive was organized exactly the way Carver had described. By company chronological. She went to the most recent entry, Vantage Capital, and opened it. The folder contained 147 documents. She scanned the first 10. Internal memos. Operational timelines. Instructions for the credential rotation schedule written in plain language, specific dated authored. She looked at the author field. A name she didn't recognize. She cross-referenced it against the org chart Adrian had built on the 43rd floor. The name appeared in the middle tier, 2 levels below Hale, 2 levels above the people who had actually executed the operation inside Vantage Capital. She went to the email chains. 3rd email down in a thread, dated 14 months ago. The reply to address at the top of the chain was a personal email, not a corporate account. The kind of address you used when you didn't want the communication in the company's email archive. The name attached to it was Victor Hale. She stared at the screen for 3 full seconds. I've got it, she said. Chen was immediately beside her. Show me. Sophia pointed to the email chain, to the reply to address, to the name. Chen photographed the screen 3 times with a device that was not her personal phone. Then she turned to Paul. Start the transfer, full archive, everything in this system. Paul began connecting the transfer hardware. Sophia kept reading. She went through company after company. The same structure repeated in each one: the planted operatives, the manufactured vulnerability, the triggered collapse, the acquisition. The language in the internal memos was so bloodless that it took a moment each time to remember what it was describing. Asset realization timeline, structural optimization, market exit facilitation, people's lives, people's work. 30 years of someone's effort described as a structural optimization. She got to the folder for the first company in the archive, Moretti Import Group. She almost didn't open it. She opened it. 39 documents. The same structure. The same bloodless language. An operational timeline that started 22 months before the collapse. More patience, more precision than the later acquisitions, the methodology still being refined. A final memo dated 2 weeks before the public announcement of the company's insolvency, with a single line at the bottom. Acquisition confirmed at 18 cents on the dollar. Transfer complete. She closed the folder. Her throat was tight in a way she didn't try to manage. She had spent 3 months building this case from the outside, in finding the financial trail following the relay architecture building the document chain. She had understood intellectually what was at the center of it. She had known it was a man's uncle, A man's grief, 4 years of patient construction, driven by the specific engine of personal loss. Seeing it in a folder, 39 documents, 18 cents on the dollar. It hit differently than she expected. Her phone vibrated. Adrian. How are we doing? She looked at the screen for a moment. Then she typed, "We have everything. Transfer in progress. The Moretti folder is in the archive." The 3 dots pulsed for a long time. "I know," he typed back. "I know it's there." She waited. "Is it?" The dots appeared and disappeared. Then, "Is it complete?" She understood what he was asking. Not whether the folder contained enough for the legal case. Whether the record of what had been done to his uncle was complete. Whether everything that had happened in those final 22 months was documented somewhere in a way that could be shown to the world. 39 documents, she typed. Everything. Another long pause. Then, "Thank you." 2 words. She felt them the way you felt something that someone had been holding for a very long time and had finally put down. She put her phone back in her pocket. "How long on the transfer?" she asked Paul. 20 minutes, he said. Maybe less. 20 minutes. She could work with 20 minutes. She went back to the terminal and kept reading. The transfer finished at 12:41. Chen secured the hardware. Paul ran a verification check that confirmed the archive's integrity. Every document accounted for every file transferred without corruption. She documented the process, on-site timestamps, at every step, the chain of custody as clean as anything Sophia had ever seen in a professional context. They were in the elevator going down when Sophia's phone rang. "Marcus." She picked up. "Where are you?" he said. "Elevator. Transfer complete. Coming down." "Listen to me," he said. His voice had the tight quality again, the one she'd learned to pay close attention to. "Hale's people know you're there." She looked at Chen. "How?" "Carver," Marcus said. "Not a betrayal. They accessed his communication records. They traced the call he made to Adrian tonight. They know someone talked. They know about the archive." "How long ago did they figure this out?" 30 minutes, maybe 40. The elevator was still moving. She did the math. If they'd figured it out 40 minutes ago, and the building was 15 minutes from Hale's main office. "Are they in the building?" she said. "We don't know yet," Marcus said. "I'm tracking 2 vehicles that left Hale's Midtown office 45 minutes ago. I lost them 8 minutes ago in a dead zone." Chen was watching her. Sophia held up 4 fingers, 4 minutes, and pointed down. Chen understood immediately. She said something quiet to Paul. "Marcus," Sophia said. "The transfer hardware, the archive is on physical media." "I know. If they get to us before we get out." "They're not going to get to you," Marcus said. "I have people outside, but I need you moving." "We're moving," she said. The elevator opened on the lobby. She scanned it the way she'd been scanning rooms for the past 10 days. Exits, positions, anything that wasn't where it was supposed to be. 2 men she didn't recognize near the building entrance. They weren't Hale's people. She could see that from the way they positioned themselves. They were facing outward, watching the street, not the elevator. Marcus's people. She exhaled. They walked out of the building at a pace that was faster than a stroll and slower than a run. Chen had the transfer hardware in a bag that looked like an ordinary laptop case. Paul was on his phone. The 2 men near the entrance fell into position beside them without acknowledging them. The car was half a block away. She could see it. They were 20 feet from it when a second car stopped at the curb ahead of them. Not Marcus's car. A different one. The door opened. The man who got out was not someone she recognized from photographs or files. He was mid-50s, heavyset, moving with the specific, purposeful energy of someone who had been told to do one thing and had come to do it. He looked at the laptop bag in Chen's hand. Then he looked at Sophia. "That belongs to our client," he said. "I'm going to need you to hand it over," Chen said without moving. "I'm a federal agent. This material has been collected pursuant to an active federal investigation. I'm going to need you to step back." The man didn't step back. "I have a court order." "Show it to me," Chen said. He reached into his coat. Sophia's entire body tensed. He produced a document. Chen looked at it for exactly 4 seconds. "This is an emergency injunction filed 40 minutes ago," she said. "It has not been served. It has not been validated by a duty judge. It is a piece of paper." She handed it back. "Step back." The man looked at Sophia again. Not at Chen, whose authority he could argue. At Sophia, who had no authority he could see. "You have no idea what you've gotten yourself into," he said. She looked at him steadily. "I have an extremely precise idea," she said. He stood there for 3 more seconds. Sophia counted them. Then something shifted in his calculation. She watched it happen in his face, the specific moment when a person decides that the action they came to take is going to cost more than they were told it would, and he stepped back. Marcus's car was pulling up. They moved. She didn't breathe properly until they were 4 blocks away. Then the adrenaline hit the back of her knees, and she made herself sit straight and breathe through it slowly, evenly, because falling apart in the back of a car after the moment had passed was not something she was going to do. Not tonight. Not when there was still work to do. "The injunction," she said to Chen, who was in the seat beside her. "Can they use it to challenge the chain of custody?" "They can try," Chen said. "They won't succeed. An injunction filed and not served doesn't affect material gathered before the service attempt. Their lawyers know that. The injunction wasn't designed to succeed legally, it was designed to create a pretext for that man to stop you on the street." She paused. "It didn't work. Because you were there. Because we followed proper protocol at every step," Chen said. "The chain of custody is clean. What we took tonight is legally unimpeachable." Sophia looked at the laptop bag on the seat between them. 147 documents from the Vantage Capital folder. 39 from the Moretti Import Group folder. 4 years of operational records. The complete picture of what Victor Hale had built and run and protected, laid out in his own people's language, organized in his own people's system, preserved now in a chain of custody that no injunction filed 40 minutes before the fact was going to touch. Her phone rang. Adrian. She picked up. "We're out," she said. "Chen has the archive. Chain of custody is clean." A silence on the other end. Not the pulsing dots silence of a text. A real silence, the kind that happened when someone needed a moment before they could speak. "Adrian," she said. "I'm here," he said. His voice was different. Not the stripped-down version, not the operational voice she'd been hearing for 10 days. Something underneath all of that something she had not heard before. "You got out." "We got out." "Hale sent someone?" "I know." Chen handled it. She paused. "We have everything." Another silence. "The injunction?" "Won't hold," she said. "Patricia will know by now. It's not going to touch the filing." "I know," he said. "I just—" He stopped. She waited. "I've been doing this for 4 years," he said. "There were moments, a lot of moments, when I thought this wasn't going to be possible. That he was too insulated, that the chain was too clean, that whatever I built, he'd find a way to dismantle it before it mattered." "He didn't," she said. "He didn't," Adrian said. "Because of what you found. The relay architecture, the timestamp pattern, everything you built in that file." He paused. "Without that, we had the financial picture and no heart. We had the pattern and no proof. What you built was the piece that made all 4 years of it hold together." She was quiet for a moment. "You built the frame," she said. "I found the center." A pause. "Are you safe?" he said. "I'm in Marcus's car," she said. "Chen is beside me. The archive is secured." "Then stay there," he said. "I'll meet you in an hour." "Where?" He named a location. She recognized it, the 43rd floor, the building on Lexington. The document boards and the stacked folders and the 3 monitors she'd walked into on a 7 a.m. Wednesday that felt like it belonged to a different version of her life. "1 hour," she said. She hung up. Marcus glanced in the rearview mirror. "How's he doing?" "He'll be fine," she said. "Yeah," Marcus said. "He will." The city moved around the car indifferent and enormous, the way it always moved, carrying its 12 million people through the night with the absolute democratic consistency of a place that does not pause for anyone's crisis or anyone's resolution. Somewhere in Midtown Roberts Peace was 40 minutes from going live. Somewhere in federal offices, Patricia was responding to an emergency injunction that would not survive the morning. In a data center on the 9th floor of a building in a neighborhood between what it used to be and what it was becoming, 3 server racks sat intact and now empty. Their contents transferred to physical media in a chain of custody that was going to hold up in every legal proceeding that followed. Sophia looked at the laptop bag. She thought about Daniel Moretti, 61 years old, 30 years of building something, 8 months after the collapse. She thought about the 7 companies, about the families who had not yet been told that the system that failed them had not actually failed it, had been broken deliberately by someone who understood exactly how to break it. They were going to be told now. Not tonight, not of the next hour, but soon. In the way that things became true when they were documented and filed and published and entered into the public record where everyone who needed to know could find them. She turned to look out the window. The city kept moving, and Sophia Bennett, who had found the edge of something 3 months ago and made the choice that changed everything, rode through it in the back of a car with the weight of 4 years of someone else's grief in a laptop bag beside her, and felt something settle in her chest that she had not felt in a very long time. Not peace. Not yet. But the particular clarifying sensation of having done the thing you were supposed to do, of having used what you could see to protect what other people couldn't. Her phone buzzed one last time before she put it away. Robert Peace goes live in 20 minutes. You should know it's good. Really good. The kind of peace that doesn't go away. She typed back. Make sure it's accurate. His response was immediate. Every line. She put the phone in her pocket. 20 minutes. She'd waited 3 months. She could wait 20 minutes. Robert's piece went live at 1:17 in the morning. Sophia knew the exact moment because her phone lit up with a notification she hadn't set Google Alert her own name, a headline she had to read twice before it became real. Federal filing alleges systematic predatory acquisition scheme. Hale Consolidated named in 4-year investigation. Her name was in the second paragraph. Corporate investigator Sophia Bennett identified as the analyst who first detected the financial anomaly that unraveled the scheme. The piece was precise-sourced, built with the careful architecture of someone who had spent 6 hours making sure that every sentence could survive a legal challenge. Robert had done exactly what he promised. Marcus saw her reading it in the rearview mirror. He didn't say anything. He didn't need to. She put the phone face down on her lap and looked at the windshield and let the fact of it settle through her. Her name in that headline meant something she had understood intellectually for weeks and was only now understanding completely. There was no version of the next part of her life that looked like the version before the elevator, before the locked doors, before Adrian asking her why she hadn't told anyone what she found. That version of Sophia Bennett was gone. She wasn't sure yet what the new one looked like. But she was sitting in the back of a car at 1:17 in the morning with a secured archive in a laptop bag beside her and a federal filing that existed and a piece of journalism that was already being read, and whatever the new version looked like, it had done this. That was enough to start with. The 43rd floor looked different at 2 in the morning. Not physically different. The document boards were still there, the stacked folders, the 3 monitors. But the quality of the room had shifted in the way that rooms shifted when the work they were built for was nearly finished. The urgency that had saturated every surface for 10 days had given way to something quieter. Not relief. Something more careful than relief. Delia was there at her monitor working. She looked up when Sophia and Marcus came in, and her expression did something brief and controlled that was as close to emotion as Sophia had ever seen from her. Chen called ahead, Delia said. The archive is intact. Complete, Sophia said. Chain of custody is clean. Delia nodded once and went back to her screen. Adrian arrived 11 minutes later. He came through the door with the specific quality of someone who had been on calls for 3 hours and had run out of the building the moment he could. His coat was open, his collar still undone from earlier in the evening, and he looked at Sophia the way she had learned to read his looks over the past 10 days, directly, without the performance of composure he maintained in every other context. "You're all right," he said. "I'm all right," she said. He crossed the room and stood in front of her and looked at her for a moment in a way that contained more than she was going to try to name at 2 in the morning. Then he looked at the laptop bag on the table beside her. "The archive," he said. "Everything," she said, "including the Moretti folder." He looked at the bag for 3 full seconds. She watched the muscles in his jaw work through something he was deciding not to say out loud, and she understood that too. Some things didn't have language yet. Some things needed time before language was the right tool. "Patricia called while I was driving," he said finally. "The injunction failed. They tried to get a duty judge to expand it and cover the archive transfer. The judge looked at the filing timeline and dismissed it in under 10 minutes. "What happens now?" Marcus said from across the room. "Patricia opens the full investigation formally tomorrow morning," Adrian said. "With the archive as primary evidence, the financial chain from the vendor contract and the relay architecture documentation." He paused. "She said the operational records from the archive are the piece she didn't know she was missing. The email chains that connect Hale personally to the instruction chain, she said those alone are enough to bring charges." "When?" Sophia asked. "She wants to move quickly," he said, "before Hale has time to create distance between himself and the people below him. She's talking about charging by end of week." He paused. "There will be arrests." The word sat in the room with a specific weight. Sophia had spent 3 months thinking about the financial architecture of this, the relay systems, the timestamp patterns, the vendor contracts. She had thought about it in the language of documentation and evidence and chain of custody. The word arrests was a different language entirely. It was the language of consequence of what happened when the abstract machinery of accountability finally connected to the actual people who had made the decisions. "Leslie Carter," she said. "In the archive," Adrian said, "named directly in the operational memos for 3 acquisitions. Thomas Reedy, named for the surveillance operation inside your company. That's a separate charge, corporate espionage. The man who called me tonight." Adrian's expression didn't change exactly, but something sharpened in it. "Name is Gregory Sloan. He's been Hale's operational director for 6 years. He's in the archive in approximately 40 places." He paused. "He made a mistake tonight calling you directly. He created a record." "He thought it would work," Sophia said. "He thought you were someone who could be scared into stopping," Adrian said. She met his eyes. "He thought wrong." The corner of his mouth moved. "He thought very wrong." She stayed on the 43rd floor until 4 in the morning. Not because there was operational work left to do. The archive was secured, the filing existed, the journalism was published, and spreading through the particular exponential velocity of a story that connected to things people already suspected but had never seen documented. She stayed because leaving felt wrong, like walking out of a room before a conversation was finished. She and Adrian sat at the long table with coffee that Marcus made around 2:30, and they went through the archive's organizational structure together, not because either of them needed to, but because both of them needed to. The specific closure of looking at the full thing and understanding its shape. They went through every company, all 8 including Moretti Import Group. Adrian talked about his uncle, while they went through the Moretti folder. Not at length, he was not a person who talked at length about the things that had cost him the most. But he talked. He said his uncle was the kind of man who named the people who worked for him and remembered their birthdays and drove to the warehouse at 5 in the morning on days when they were short-staffed because he didn't believe in asking people to do things he wouldn't do himself. He said his uncle had called him 3 weeks before the collapse, worried not understanding what was happening to the accounts, asking if Adrian knew someone who could look at the books. He said he had told his uncle it was probably a correctable error and not to worry. He said that was the last substantive conversation they'd had before everything fell apart. He said it once and didn't say it again, and Sophia didn't ask him to. She understood that some things needed to be said once in order to be put down, and pushing for more than that was a form of cruelty dressed as empathy. "He would have liked you," Adrian said after a silence. She looked up from the folder. "He liked people who paid attention," he said. "People who took the work seriously." He thought the people who took the work seriously were the people who actually gave a damn about the people the work affected. He paused. He was right about that. She didn't have an answer for that. She had the particular sensation of someone receiving a thing they weren't sure they'd earned, and she sat with it quietly, rather than deflecting it, because deflecting it felt like the wrong response. "Your name is in a federal article," she said instead. "I know. The financial press is going to spend the next week trying to figure out what your involvement in this means for your business interests," she said. "I know that too. Are you prepared for that?" He looked at her across the table. "I've been preparing for it for 4 years," he said. "What comes next is the part where things become public and complicated and slow, and I have very little control over how any of it unfolds." He paused. "That's fine. I built it to be handled by people who are better at that part than I am." "Patricia," she said, "and the investigators she's bringing in, and the journalists, and eventually the court." He paused. "I built it for the system to take over. My job was to get it to the point where the system could take over." She thought about that. About what it meant to spend 4 years building something with the specific intention of handing it to other people to finish. About the discipline that required. The patience. The particular form of trust in institutions that were imperfect, but were still in the end the only mechanism available for this kind of reckoning. "You did that," she said. "We did that," he said. She looked at him. He meant it. She could see that he meant it not as a courtesy, not as a gesture of inclusion, but as a genuine statement of what he believed had happened over the past 10 days. She had walked into this as someone who found a thread and didn't know where it led. She was walking out as someone who had helped pull it until the whole structure came down. She looked at the Moretti folder on the table between them. "Close it," she said gently. He looked at her. "It's done," she said. "Close it." He looked at the folder for a moment. Then he closed it. And he left his hand on the cover for 3 seconds, the way you left your hand on something when you were saying goodbye to it properly. And she looked away and gave him that. She left the 43rd floor at 4:12. Adrian walked her out, not to the elevator, but to the lobby, which she noted and didn't comment on. They stood in the lobby while Marcus brought the car around. "What happens to you now?" he asked. She thought about her office. About Richard Cho, who had flagged the Patterson file and given her a cover story and read 20 pages in 4 minutes and asked what she needed. About the Patterson logistics account, whose board chair had pulled his server architecture offline at 10 o'clock, and whose company was still intact this morning because of it. About the 4-year-old preliminary audit notes that were going to look very different in the context of a federal investigation. "I don't know," she said. "My company is going to have to respond to the article. They'll have questions about what I knew and when I knew it and why I didn't report internally." She paused. "Richard will back me up, but the process is going to be uncomfortable." "I know people," Adrian said. "If your company makes this difficult, don't," she said. He stopped. "I don't want to be protected," she said. "I want to handle it myself. If I did something right here, I want to stand on it myself." He was quiet for a moment. Then, "All right. But," she said, "if they do something specifically wrong, something retaliatory, something false, then I want to know I can call you." "You can always call me," he said. She looked at him. The lobby was quiet around them, the specific quiet of a building that was emptying out at the end of the night, and she was aware of the particular quality of standing in this specific space, with this specific person, and of the fact that something was changing in the texture of the moment. She had spent 10 days working beside him in conditions that stripped away everything performative fear, urgency, stakes the specific intimacy of two people trying to prevent a serious harm with limited time and imperfect tools. She knew what he was like when he was exhausted and still precise. She knew what he was like when something landed that he hadn't expected. She knew the difference between his operational voice and the voice underneath it. She also knew that whatever existed between them in the pressure of the past 10 days was going to look different in the daylight of ordinary life. She had seen enough people mistake proximity under stress for something permanent to know that the thing to do was not to rush toward a conclusion about what it was. "Sleep," she said. "You too." "Will you?" she asked. He almost smiled. "Probably not." "Try anyway." The car pulled up. She looked at him for one more moment. His face in the lobby light, tired and honest in the specific way that 4 years of carrying something and finally setting it down made a person honest. "Adrian," she said. "Yes." "What you built here the way you built it. Patient, legal, without destroying anyone who didn't deserve to be destroyed." She paused. "Your uncle would have liked that too." He went very still. She got in the car before he could answer. She slept for 5 hours. It wasn't enough. It was the most sleep she'd had in 3 days, and she woke up at 9:45, feeling the particular exhausted clarity of someone who has burned through every reserve and come out the other side into something that was not quite normal, but was at least functional. Her phone had 47 notifications. She looked at them in order of importance. 3 from Patricia's office, requesting her availability for formal deposition preparation. 2 from Robert confirming that the article had been picked up by 4 major outlets overnight and asking if she was available for a follow-up call. 1 from Richard sent at 7:30 that said, "Only saw the article. Call me when you can. I've got you." She read Richard's message twice. She put the phone down, made coffee, and sat at her kitchen table. The same table, the same chair, the place where this had started in every meaningful sense, and looked at her hands around her mug. The article had 12,000 shares by the time she checked it. By the afternoon, it would have more. By the end of the week, when Patricia filed formal charges and the story moved from investigative journalism to active prosecution, it would be the kind of story that people referenced when talking about accountability mechanisms and financial crime and the gap between what the system was supposed to do and what it actually did without someone pushing it. Her name would be in that story. She had spent 6 years being invisible to the people who benefited from her work. That was over. She wasn't sure how she felt about it. She turned it over carefully, the way she turned over a complex document, looking for the honest assessment underneath the first emotional response. What she found was more nuanced than she expected, not satisfaction, though there was some of that. Not fear, though she'd lived with enough of that in the past 3 months that its absence felt notable. Something more like alignment. The sensation of having spent years developing a capacity and finally using it for what it was actually for. Her phone rang. Her mother. She picked up. "Sophia." Her mother's voice warm and sharp, the way it always was, the specific register of someone who had raised a daughter to be careful and precise, and was now reading an article that explained what that daughter had been careful and precise about for 3 months without mentioning it. "This article. I know, Mom. You didn't tell me. I couldn't. You could have told me something. Mom." She kept her voice even. "If I'd told you something, you would have been in a position to be asked about it. I was protecting you." A pause. Her mother processing this. "Are you safe?" "I'm safe." "Are you sure?" "Yes." Another pause. "This man, Adrian Moretti." Sophia looked at the wall. "Yes. The article says he's been building this investigation for 4 years. It says he's a powerful businessman with a complicated reputation." Her mother's voice carried the particular careful calibration of a woman asking something oblique and directly at the same time. "It doesn't say a lot about who he is." "No," Sophia said. "It doesn't." "Do you know who he is?" She thought about the elevator, the document board, the car at 11 at night with his voice doing the stripped down thing, his hand on the Moretti folder for 3 seconds. I'm learning, she said. Her mother was quiet for a moment. Then, be careful. I'm always careful. You were always careful professionally, her mother said. I'm not talking about professionally. Sophia almost smiled. I know, Mom. All right, her mother said. Are you eating? I had coffee. Sophia. I'll eat, she said. She ate. She called Richard at 11. He picked up on the second ring. How are you doing? He said immediately, which was not how Richard usually opened a conversation. I'm managing, she said. How bad is it at the office? It's not bad, he said, which surprised her. The managing partners held a call this morning. Legal was on it. The consensus is that what you found and how you handled it, bringing in federal authorities, maintaining the chain of custody, not creating any liability for the company, is actually defensible, more than defensible. They're not going to come after me. They're not going to come after you, he confirmed. Partly because they'd be idiots to, and partly because Hale's team had operatives inside this building, and that's a problem the company needs to address very carefully going forward. Your name attached to discovering that problem is more asset than liability right now. She exhaled slowly. And Leslie Carter. Human Resources is handling it, he said. Quietly. Today. She thought about Leslie Carter in that conference room, warm and attentive, and completely dangerous. What about the assignment list she gave you, the portfolios she directed? I've pulled every file from the past 14 months that touched any portfolio on that list, he said. I'm reviewing them personally. If there's anything that looks like it was positioned the way Patterson was positioned, I'll flag it and we'll get independent eyes on it. She hadn't asked him to do that. He'd gotten there himself. Richard, she said. Don't thank me, he said. This is the job. This is what the job is supposed to be. She understood. She let it be. One more thing, he said. The Patterson Logistics Board chair called the office this morning. He asked to speak with whoever had been assigned to his account. His exact words were, I want to thank the analyst who kept my company alive. She was quiet for a moment. He doesn't need to do that, she said. He knows he doesn't, Richard said. That's why he's doing it. Patricia's office reached her at 2 p.m. with a formal deposition schedule. 3 sessions starting the following Monday. Sophia cleared her calendar, notified Richard, and spent the rest of the afternoon reviewing her own documentation with the precision of someone who was going to be questioned about every decision she'd made over the past 3 months and wanted to be able to answer every question accurately. She was 3 hours into the review when her phone buzzed. Adrian, how are you holding up? She considered the question seriously before answering, which was the only way she knew how to answer it. Better than expected, she typed. Company isn't coming after me. Deposition schedule confirmed. Richard is auditing the full assignment list. Good, he sent back. Patricia called me this morning. She said you're the clearest witness she's ever prepped a case around. She looked at the message. She hasn't prepped me yet. She said she could tell from the documentation, he replied. She said the way you structured the relay chain analysis, the way you anticipated the questions a judge would ask and answered them in the document itself before they were asked. She said, that's not something most analysts do. Most analysts aren't planning to testify, she typed back. Were you planning to testify when you wrote it? She paused. I was planning for every contingency, she typed. That was one of them. A pause on his end. Then, can I take you to dinner tonight? She looked at the message. She thought about what she'd told herself in the lobby at 4 a.m. about the difference between proximity under pressure and something that could survive ordinary daylight, about not rushing toward a conclusion. She also thought about the way he'd closed the Moretti folder. Yes, she typed, but somewhere quiet. I don't want to be recognized tonight. His response came back immediately. I know exactly the place. The restaurant was small and not famous, and the kind of place where the lighting was warm and the tables were far enough apart that conversation stayed private. She would not have found it on her own. It fit him, she thought, the side of him that existed beneath the financial press profile, and the complicated reputation, and the 4 years of patient, careful, methodical construction. He was already there when she arrived. He stood when she came in, which she noted without making anything of it. They sat across from each other at a corner table, and for the first few minutes the conversation had the specific quality of two people recalibrating to each other in a context that wasn't the back of a car or a fluorescent-lit room full of document boards. "The article hit 60,000 shares by noon," he said. "I saw," she said. "3 of the 7 companies contacted Patricia's office today," he said. "Former owners. They want to be part of the proceeding." She looked up. That's significant." "It means the case is going to be broader than what we filed," he said. "Patricia thinks that's good. More documented harm means a stronger picture of pattern and intent." "When do charges come?" "Thursday," he said. "She's moving faster than she initially said. The archive gave her everything she needed to accelerate." Thursday, 3 days from now. Victor Hale, whose name had been in magazine profiles about vision and disruption and calculated risk, was going to be charged by a federal prosecutor on Thursday because a 27-year-old corporate analyst had found a timestamp anomaly and built a case around it instead of walking away. She looked at her menu without reading it. "What are you thinking?" Adrian asked. "I'm thinking about what happens after Thursday," she said. "The charging is the beginning, not the end. The legal process takes months, years potentially. Hale has resources, and he's going to use every one of them." "He is," Adrian said. "But he's going to use them inside a system that now has the full picture. That's different from using them to confuse a system that only ever saw pieces." He paused. The reason he survived this long was the fragmentation. Nobody ever saw it end to end. Now everybody does. She nodded. She turned her water glass slowly on the table. "There's something I've been thinking about," she said. "Tell me." "The Patterson Logistics account," she said. "The vulnerability they built into it is still there. Even with the trigger neutralized, the structural weakness exists. If someone wanted to, they could find it and exploit it through legitimate channels. It doesn't take a Victor Hale to exploit a structural weakness if the weakness is documented in an audit file." He was watching her. "I want to fix it," she said. "Not just flag it. I want to build a remediation plan, something that actually closes the vulnerability instead of just noting it. And then, I want to do the same for the other 7 companies. Whatever vulnerabilities Hale's people built into the systems they targeted, I want to find them and close them." Adrian leaned back slightly. "That's a significant undertaking." "I know. The 7 prior companies are under different ownership now," he said. "Some of them were dissolved. The asset recovery is going to be complicated." "I know that too," she said. "I'm not talking about recovering what was lost. I'm talking about making sure the mechanism can't be used again on whatever comes next. The companies that survive the ones that can be rebuilt, I want to make sure the systems inside them are actually clean." He looked at her for a moment. "You're describing a new function," he said. "Something that doesn't exist in the current landscape. A forensic remediation practice, not just finding the damage, but repairing the architecture." "Yes," she said. "Who would run it?" She met his eyes. "I would." The table was quiet. "Is that why you've been thinking about it?" he said. "I've been thinking about it because it's the obvious next thing," she said. "Finding the problem is only half the work. If I find a problem and document it and hand it to a prosecutor and walk away, the underlying system that made the problem possible is still there. Someone else comes along in 5 years and does the same thing differently." She paused. "I don't want to just catch it. I want to make it harder to do in the first place." He was quiet for a long moment. She could see him thinking, not weighing whether it was possible, but thinking through what it would require. The particular quality of a person whose mind moved in the direction of construction rather than evaluation. "You'd need institutional backing," he said. "Resources. Access to financial systems that a single analyst can't independently access." "I know." You'd need partners, he said. People with different expertise. Legal, technical, investigative. I know. You'd need someone who understood both the financial architecture and the operational mechanics of this kind of scheme from the inside out, he said. She looked at him. Yes, she said. I would. He looked back at her. The restaurant was warm around them, quiet, unhurried, in the way of a place that understood that the people inside it had things to work out that required time and space. She was aware of the particular quality of the moment, two people sitting across a table from each other after the crisis had passed, and the dust was beginning to settle, discovering what was left when the urgency wasn't the thing holding them in the same room. What was left, she thought, was this: the ease of talking to someone who kept up. The specific comfort of being direct and having directness returned without calibration. The fact that he had looked at her across a document board and never once spoken to her like someone who needed the picture simplified. Is that what you're asking me? He said. I'm asking if you're interested, she said. In the concept, in what it could become. I'm interested in anything you build, he said. That's been true since the elevator. She looked at him. You're going to have a complicated few months. The investigation, the press, managing whatever the fallout does to your business interests. Yes, he said. This isn't a good time to take on something new. Probably not, he said. Are you offering to wait? She thought about it seriously. No, she said. I don't think waiting is right either. I think the right thing is to move carefully and in parallel. Keep the professional thing and the other thing distinct until we understand what each of them actually is. The other thing, he said. The other thing, she said. He almost smiled. It was the full version this time, not the corner-of-the-mouth version she'd seen in the elevator, but something warmer, something that changed his face into something she hadn't seen in the press photographs and understood why. Some things didn't survive a camera. Carefully, he said, and in parallel. Yes, she said, I can do that. I know you can, she said. 2 weeks later, Sophia sat across from Patricia in a federal building conference room and gave her formal deposition. She answered every question accurately, completely, and in the plain language she had always used when she wanted something to be understood rather than impressive. She cited page numbers. She walked the attorneys through the relay architecture the way she had walked Adrian through it the first time, step by step. No assumptions, the logic visible at every point. She was in the room for 4 hours. When she came out, Marcus was waiting in the hallway with coffee. She took it without comment. How was it? He said. Good, she said. She's ready. He nodded. Adrian's downstairs. She looked at him. You're all here. Patricia wanted him available in case there were questions that needed his source documentation, Marcus said. Delia too. She thought about the 43rd floor. The document boards, the stacked folders, the 3 monitors. The morning she had walked in with a black keycard in her pocket, not knowing what she was walking into, understanding only that whatever it was, she had already decided to go toward it instead of away. All right, she said. She took the elevator down. Adrian was standing in the lobby, the way he'd been standing in a lobby the night she first saw him. Still unhurried, the particular stillness of someone who has trained themselves out of visible impatience. He looked up when she came out of the elevator and crossed to her. How'd it go? He said. She's going to win, Sophia said. He held her gaze. You're sure? I've never been more sure of anything I've built, she said. He nodded once. Then it's done. Almost, she said. Thursday. Thursday was 2 days away. Thursday, Victor Hale would be charged. Thursday, the piece of the world that he had spent 4 years breaking in careful, deliberate, profitable increments would begin the slow process of being named and recorded and made accountable. It would not be fast. It would not be clean. It would be the long, imperfect adversarial work of a system doing what it was designed to do when someone gave it the complete picture. But it would happen. She was certain of that now, in the way she was certain of things that were built correctly, not from optimism, not from hope, but from the verifiable documented chain of custody, intact knowledge that what had been built would hold. Dinner tonight, Adrian said. Yes, she said. Same place. Quiet, he said. Quiet, she agreed. They walked out of the federal building into the afternoon. The city was doing what it always did, moving enormous indifferent to any individual story running through its streets. Somewhere, a man who had spent 4 years dismantling other people's work was spending one of his last 2 days as a free person, deciding whether his legal strategy had any angle left it hadn't tried. Somewhere, 3 former business owners were in contact with a federal prosecutor's office for the first time since the collapses that had taken everything they'd built. Somewhere, Richard Cho was reviewing a 14-month assignment list with the careful attention of a man who had decided that this was what the job was supposed to be for. Somewhere, Nadia, who had been scared enough to break protocol, was living in a different city with her documentation intact and a deposition scheduled, and the particular fragile relief of a person who had stopped running. And Sophia Bennett, who had found the edge of something 3 months ago in a Tuesday afternoon audit, and made a choice that had cost her sleep and safety and the comfortable certainty of a life inside understood limits, walked out of a federal building in the afternoon and turned her face toward the city she had lived in for 6 years and felt it differently than she had ever felt it before. Not smaller, not safer, not simpler, but hers in a way it hadn't been before. Hers to move through as someone who had found out exactly what she was capable of and had decided without hesitation to be capable of all of it. Adrian walked beside her. Not ahead, not behind, beside. She had been asked once by the elevator by the locked door, by a man with quiet eyes and 4 years of grief and the patience to build something that would last, whether she was someone worth trusting. She had proven that she was, and the woman who walked out of that building on that afternoon had looked at every locked door in her path and opened them anyway, one by one, until there were no more doors between her and the truth. And she had done it not because someone asked her to, not because she was protected, not because the cost was low, but because she was exactly the kind of person who could not look at something wrong and call it anything else. That was who Sophia Bennett was. That was who she had always been, and now the world knew it too.